I became the god of light. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction. So don't try any techniques you hear here in real life, your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 178 The Power of the Two Divine Artifacts. This blood cup has a very special ability. Besides the ability the blood god used to absorb blood out of thin air, essentially applying a true continuous blood loss buff to enemies, it has a second ability, which can be considered a derivative of the first. It can concentrate the life force and energy within blood. Don't underestimate this simple ability. It might be useless to gods. But if mortals obtain it, they can not only enhance their strength with a blood cup, but it can even heal injuries and extend their lifespan. Although he doesn't know the specifics without testing it, Su-Yun felt that if he used it continuously, adding 100 years or so should be easy. In an instant, he thought of all sorts of uses for this blood cup. Putting aside other things, if this cup fell into the real world, it goes without saying that those in power would go crazy. Although the real world doesn't have any supernatural powers and can't enhance strength, the blood of ordinary people certainly contains life force, more than enough to extend lifespan. Su-Yun pondered, and seeing his expression, the god of fire and the others quickly asked him curiously. He didn't hide anything and directly explained the blood cup's abilities. As expected, the moment the words were spoken, the Vulcan showed disappointment. I thought it was something else, the Vulcan muttered, grinning at his beard-covered lips. For gods, life force and energy are useless. Besides their endless lifespans, divine power cannot be replenished by other forms of energy. The old tortoise looked curiously at the black bead. Quick, see what power this bead has. Su-Yun picked up another artifact left behind by the god of shadows and began to remove the shadow divine power from it. A burst of black light flashed, and the entire black bead suddenly erupted with powerful energy. Unfortunately, like water without a source, after about half an hour, the shadow divine power within the artifact was finally removed. However, the divine power consumed in this process was also considerable, requiring him to take out 20 more level 3 faith crystals to replenish his divine power. He now only had 40 level 3 faith crystals left in his storage bag. Fortunately, he still had faith crystals in the ring, so he could be considered quite wealthy. As the divine power penetrated a black bead, a message appeared in his mind. This is, Su-Yun's eyes lit up, pleasantly surprised by the artifact's ability. Shadow concealment. This artifact allows one to remain in the shadows, achieving invisibility. This ability is great. Su-Yun was in high spirits. Compared to the blood cup's ability, this one was far more useful to him. In the real world, he needed to conceal his presence. Sometimes he could openly show himself to collect faith, but other times it would be troublesome without invisibility, such as when going to special places or making an exit. Now, with this, things would be much easier in the real world. It's a bit of a pity, though. Its effectiveness is greatly reduced during the day, but it's quite good at night, he thought regretfully. However, it's not bad as a transitional item. If that divine spell succeeds in the future, we won't need this anymore. He had already devised a solution for the invisibility problem, planning to develop an optical invisibility spell in the future, so that he could achieve invisibility at any time. So, what is it? Vulcan couldn't help but ask. Invisibility in the shadows is useless. Su-Yun shook his head and said bluntly. He wasn't wrong. While its effects were surprisingly good in the real world, it wasn't very effective in this extraordinary world. He wanted to use this artifact to ambush gods of the same or higher level, but getting close without being detected would be a risky proposition. Perhaps the god of shadows could get close to a god of the same level without being detected, but his chances of failure would be high. However, it should be quite effective for confusing others to dodge attacks or for retreating. Oh, I see. The fire god and the others were disappointed for a moment. They had expected to hear about some powerful effects. However, they still showed envy. The forest god said, "That's great. God of light, you've obtained 2 artifacts for free. Congratulations, congratulations." The gods quickly offered their congratulations, genuinely happy for Su-Yun, without any sense of apprehension. Perhaps if one of them had obtained these 2 artifacts, they would have felt jealousy and apprehension, but if it was the god of light, they wouldn't even feel that emotion. The reason was simple: the gap was simply too vast. Even without using those two divine artifacts, the god of light could easily annihilate them. The addition or subtraction of these artifacts made no difference, so why should they be wary? The events that had unfolded before them had already made them give up on comparing themselves to this monstrous figure. To truly compare would be a blow to their confidence. It was better to compare themselves to those around them. At least the others were normal gods. Those were the real comparisons. Su-Yun nodded in response. Then, he suddenly thought of something and tried using a divine spell with the blood cup. The blood cup glowed red. Holy flame! As soon as he finished speaking, a raging inferno carrying a holy aura surged forward. This sight startled the fire gods, who all looked at the god of light in confusion, wondering what he was doing. No, Su-Yun's expression changed, becoming somewhat grim. This artifact didn't amplify his strength at all, yet he clearly saw the god of blood unleash a divine spell with inconsistent aura before and after. How could it not have that effect, unless this artifact doesn't match my authority, preventing it from amplifying the divine spell? Su-Yun muttered to himself, a hint of disappointment on his face. Hearing his words, the god of fire and the others exchanged glances, somewhat enlightened and embarrassed. The god of fire said, "So that's how it is. I thought any artifact could enhance one's power, but it doesn't work." "Yes, I really didn't expect this," the other gods echoed. They were also learning about this for the first time. After all, they only had one artifact each, so they naturally assumed it would work this way. They hadn't expected there to be a compatibility issue with authority. The god of fire said regretfully, "It seems you, god of light, will have to create your own artifact, but since it's you, it certainly won't take much time. We should be able to see your artifact soon." The other gods agreed, full of confidence in him. At the same time, they were also curious about what kind of artifact a freak like the god of light would create, and what powerful effects it would have. Chapter 179: The Artifact of Creation. Upon hearing this, Su-Yun felt a slight pang of regret, but then an idea popped into his head regarding his own divine artifact. If I'm going to play, I'll play big. Maybe I can create a perfect, heaven-defying artifact. Su-Yun's eyes gleamed, and he thought of the 3 words on the white book he held during his role in the modern world: Genesis. An artifact with the power of creation. Just thinking about it made him feel a bit crazy and delusional, like he was indulging in wishful thinking. Never mind, I have to try it eventually. As the saying goes, a gamble can pay off. If I can really create it, I'll be rolling in money. Su-Yun suppressed his excitement and continued to think about the details. But then I'll have to rely on my followers. I need to guide them. Thinking of Genesis, he realized he hadn't yet given his followers any proper education or spiritual guidance to help them understand the world. For example, the formation of the world. What's the most crucial point in the modern Bible? It's the creation myth, of course. As a god of light, even if he just imitated the Bible, perhaps adding some modern scientific elements, I'm sure I can present a moving creation myth to the believers, making them believe without a doubt. Su-Yun pondered. Regardless of whether it succeeds or not, this event will play a very good role in uniting the faith. He paused, then turned his attention back to the present. Let's continue exploring, Su-Yun said with a slight smile. All right, the gods nodded with smiles. Then, they continued to explore the area around the ruins. As they continued their exploration, outside the special rift, the massive tribe of 10,000 people, where the god of shadows and the god of blood resided, also descended into chaos. Impossible, no, God. The believers looked on in despair, feeling their power gradually wither. They were anxious and worried about their gods. A terrifying thought crossed their minds, yet they dared not believe it. Besides their unwavering faith, they also worried about how they would survive without their god. Not only would they face the evil creatures of the night, but the tribes they had previously invaded and offended would surely retaliate, leading to a tragic end. Despair filled their hearts. In the ruins, after searching for some time, Su-Yun and the others, whether due to running out of luck or having already obtained all the good items in the tribe, hadn't found anything of value. After flying for a while longer, Su-Yun suddenly suggested, "Why don't we split up and search? That way, we'll have a better chance of finding something good." The gods hesitated, then pondered for a moment, and almost unanimously agreed. "Good, that's a good suggestion." Hearing their agreement, Su-yoon breathed a slight sigh of relief. After exchanging a few more words, just as they were about to split up to search, the god of rain suddenly spoke up weakly. Could I go with the god of light? Before the other gods could ask, he continued, my strength is too weak, searching alone is too dangerous. Following the god of fire would only be a burden to you all. It's better to stay with the god of light. With his strength, I'm not afraid of being seen as a burden. Of course, there was something else he didn't mention. He was more familiar with the god of light, having followed him all this way, and he felt safer with him. The god of fire and the others looked at Su-yoon, seeking his opinion. Su-yoon pondered for a moment, finding nothing to hide, and readily agreed. All right. Seeing his agreement, the god of fire added before leaving, regardless of whether we find anything or not, we'll regroup here later and leave this ruin together. This was unanimously agreed upon, and then they each chose a direction and set off. Su-yoon, along with the old turtle and the god of rain, flew directly in a familiar direction. The Vulcans, who had spotted their flight path from afar, all vaguely guessed what was going on, their faces showing regret. Considering the power of the god of light, they could only sigh and choose to give up. Su-yoon's lips curled slightly. He had naturally felt their gazes, and seeing them abandon their plan made him feel better. He had originally planned to uproot the tree quietly by himself, but then reconsidered. If he did, the Vulcans would surely realize that one of them had done it. Besides, such a large divine tree was definitely meant to be planted within the tribe. Unless he permanently banned other tribes, it would be discovered sooner or later, causing unnecessary embarrassment. He decided to abandon the sneaky approach and be more open. After all, no god would compete with him for it. That was the confidence that strength brought. Thinking of his strength, his desire to improve it soared like never before. The reason I was able to advance beyond my level before was because of the pay-to-win method. I can't keep doing this forever. Sooner or later I'll run out of faith crystals, and then I'll be in a real bind. It seems that after handling some matters back at the tribe, I'll also need to return to the real world to try and advance to level 4 as soon as possible, and the light artifact too. Maybe there's one ready-made in the real world. Just as he smiled, they quickly arrived at their destination. A 7 or 8 meter tall divine artifact stood there, its branches and leaves flourishing. Thankfully, it hadn't suffered any damage during this time, and he breathed a sigh of relief. Kid, you really are cunning, the old tortoise exclaimed, shaking its head. Hearing the words kid who takes advantage, Su-yoon's lips twitched, and he resisted the urge to make turtle soup. This old tortoise really liked taking advantage. It probably realized he wasn't the domineering type who liked to fight with tortoises at the slightest provocation. Hearing this, the god of rain habitually retorted, chuckling, HMPH, isn't this something everyone knows? You don't know, the god of fire and the others already knew, haha, he laughed, staring at the old tortoise with astonishment, as if it were some rare species. You bastard, I'll fight you to the death, the old tortoise glared angrily, leaping up and frantically scratching at the god of rain's face with its 2 front claws. A frenzied, wild scratching. The god of rain was horrified. Su-yoon's lips twitched slightly, ignoring the 2 clowns, he quickly flew to the foot of the divine tree. Chapter 180 Soul Gem. Gazing at the towering divine tree, Su-yoon pondered for a moment, then suddenly flicked his sleeve, and a burst of white light shot out. The holy white light gradually seeped into the soil beneath the divine tree. A series of rumbling sounds echoed as the soil beneath the entire tree began to churn. The tree's roots, carrying a large clump of soil, gradually separated from the area. This commotion successfully attracted the attention of the old tortoise and the god of rain, who watched curiously. That guy, the god of light, he wouldn't have been carrying that tree and soil all along, would he? The old tortoise's eyes were strange, but he suddenly imagined something and found it somewhat amusing. The god of rain, reminded of this, clearly also imagined this scene, and his eye twitched. However, fearing retaliation, he quickly covered for Su-yoon, coughing and saying, "What's the big deal? It's just carrying something, so what? It won't cause any harm." He spoke these words against his conscience with utmost seriousness. The old tortoise was about to make a sarcastic remark, but just as he was about to speak, a new situation arose with Su-yoon. After enveloping the entire tree and some soil in white light and lifting them completely into the air, Su-yoon, holding the special ring, immediately channeled a wisp of divine power into it. The yellow gemstone faintly glowed, and a feeling of spiritual connection washed over him. He reached out and touched the divine tree. Not long after the two men in the distance found their amusement, a scene completely unexpected unfolded. Whoosh! The entire divine tree, carrying the soil, vanished from its spot. Gone! Two exclamations escaped their lips, their faces filled with disbelief. After the initial surprise, this scene felt like a stinging slap in the face. Reflecting on their previous thoughts, both the men felt unanimously embarrassed. Thank goodness I didn't say it, the god of light probably didn't hear, they thought with unanimous relief. After a moment of awkwardness, the old tortoise suddenly realized something. The god of light has a special item, a special item. Upon hearing this, the god of rain's face lit up with sudden understanding, which then turned into deep envy. The god of light actually has a special item. I thought he would just carry the tree around like that. I really don't know where he got it from. Sigh, he felt a pang of jealousy. Not only was his strength inferior, but the god of light also seemed to possess an endless stream of wonderful things, truly something to envy. Before they could think any further, Suyun, having retrieved the divine tree, immediately flew towards them. Once close, he said, let's go. He led the way. The god of rain, with the old tortoise, quickly followed. After a while, the god of rain had some doubts and spoke to the old tortoise about them. Something feels off. The god of light seems to have a very clear purpose. Where is he going? The old tortoise, who was originally indifferent, was now deep in thought. After a while, he joked, I guess he's going to collect some treasure again, like that divine tree. Upon hearing this, the god of rain was stunned, and even the old tortoise who had spoken became suspicious. Could it be that he found something good? Just as they were wondering, after flying for more than 10 minutes, they saw the god of light ahead, who had slowly stopped. Their suspicions were immediately noticed by a tree in front of them, a withered tree with few leaves. They were not contemptuous of the tree's appearance, but rather full of surprise. Because they could see that although the tree was not tall and looked withered, these were just appearances. This tree was a divine tree, a plant bestowed by the gods. The god of light really found something good, another divine tree, the god of rain murmured to himself. Thinking about his own luck, compared to that of the god of light, he suddenly felt that his luck seemed to be slightly inferior. The old tortoise beside him looked on in surprise, then suddenly realized that the divine tree looked somewhat familiar. Suyun pulled out the divine tree in the same way, quickly put it away, and flew back to the old tortoise and the others. God of light, that divine tree of yours, I feel like I've seen it somewhere before, the old tortoise said, deep in thought. Oh, Suyun and the other were somewhat surprised, then tacitly did not disturb the old tortoise, wanting to see what he could say. After thinking for a while, the old tortoise exclaimed, I remember now, this divine tree is the soul divine tree, soul divine tree. Suyun and the other repeated in confusion. The old tortoise was surprised for a moment, then clicked his tongue in amazement and said, I have to say, god of light, your luck is really good. The soul fruit tree you just harvested, if managed well, is no worse than the one you harvested before. How so? Suyun asked curiously. The god of rain also pricked up his ears. The old tortoise slowly said, once this divine tree absorbs enough souls, it can give birth to a soul divine fruit. The soul divine fruit is a very valuable thing for you gods. He then explained in detail the effects of the soul divine fruit that Suyun had experienced, leaving the god of rain astonished and his eyes burning with desire. Although the divine fruit had some drawbacks, if he had a few of these fruits, he could directly advance to third-level god. Just thinking about it made him incredibly envious. The old tortoise concluded with a hint of regret, what a pity, look at the state of this soul divine tree. It hasn't been nourished by souls for a long time. It's almost dead. If it weren't for its strong foundation, it probably would have withered and died long ago. Then what can we do? The god of rain asked with a touch of regret. Suyun frowned and thought for a moment, then suddenly said, if I remember correctly, the soul disappears after a person dies, right? Where did your souls come from? You don't understand. The old tortoise's dark eyes revealed a smug look, and its aged voice said, it's true that the soul disappears, but we have something specifically to attract souls. The soul gem, that thing is considered a divine artifact. When used, within a certain range, the soul of any creature that has just died will be drawn here and directly captured by the soul gem. That's how you obtain a soul, and then feed the soul to the divine tree. Isn't that much simpler? The old tortoise shook its head smugly, then looked at Suyun and said, fortunately, the sea god doesn't need any divinely bestowed plants, otherwise this divine tree wouldn't have been planted here so easily. You're incredibly lucky, Su-Yun and the other nodded, both somewhat surprised by the soul gem. Chapter 181. It was just a bit of luck. The god of rain was somewhat envious of the divine fruit, but couldn't help but sigh from the bottom of his heart. This divine tree is truly evil. I wonder how many souls it has absorbed. The old tortoise shook his head upon hearing this. He understood the law of the jungle far better than the god of rain. The number of souls you mentioned must be considerable, Su-Yun said thoughtfully. He had a vague guess that a single soul divine fruit probably required 1,000 souls, or at least close. Compared to this divine tree, I value the soul gem you mentioned more. What happened to that artifact? He didn't care about the divine tree. With nearly 10 billion people in the real world, he was that magnanimous. Besides, the divine fruit's effect was rather useless. For him, who was constantly increasing his followers, it was practically worthless, at most used to break through a bottleneck. Speaking of divine fruits, he also thought of the few soul divine fruits still gathering dust in his storage bag. He had been enjoying the thrill of increasing his divine power and had neglected this matter for a while. Now, thinking about it, it was a bit of a pity. He would have to make use of these divine fruits to break through to the 4th level. Mentioning the soul gem, the old tortoise couldn't help but laugh. Don't even think about it. I don't know where that thing is either. It might be outside the ruins, or it might be destroyed. Such a small thing, who knows where it's fallen in some hidden corner? It also has the ability to conceal its aura. How could you possibly find it? Don't even dream about it, it's a waste of time, he said rationally. The god of rain, standing nearby, nodded in agreement. If what the old tortoise said was true, then it really was impossible to find it. Hearing this, Su-Yun felt a pang of regret. Artifacts related to the soul were clearly a rare type, and the benefits of obtaining one were self-evident. But unfortunately, he wasn't the chosen one who could just happen to. Oh, he suddenly paused. Wait, wouldn't I become a bootleg chosen one? Is it possible? Thinking this, he gasped slightly, a sense of anticipation rising in his eyes. If that soul gem really is here in the ruins, with my blessing spell and my current child of destiny state, I might actually stumble upon it. No sooner said than done. He suddenly unleashed his divine spell amidst the puzzled expressions of the old tortoise and the god of rain. Blessing spell, enhanced luck. As his consciousness activated the blessing spell characters, his divine power instantly dropped by 15% of its full strength. A dazzling white light enveloped him, leaving the old tortoise and the god of rain stunned. Su-Yun felt a profound, mysterious, and unfathomable power suddenly surrounding him. A slight smile played on his lips. The effect is quite good. From initially consuming half of my full divine power to 30%, and finally to 15%, my foundation has increased significantly. While he was feeling satisfied, the old tortoise and the god of rain looked on in confusion. God of light, what are you doing? The two of them looked around as if searching for something dangerous. No need to look anymore, there are no enemies. I was just recasting my blessing spell. Su-Yun made up an excuse. You scared me to death. I thought some enemy that required your blessing spell had come. The two of them breathed a sigh of relief, looking cowardly. Let's go. Su-Yun ignored them and, after assessing his current state, flew directly towards the direction he felt most connected to. The old tortoise and the god of rain exchanged glances, feeling that this scene seemed somewhat familiar. No way. Thinking of Su-Yun, who had already obtained 2 divine trees, they gasped slightly, each feeling a bit incredulous. It shouldn't be possible. The god of light just randomly chose a direction. Yeah, that's it. After a moment of self-consolation, the two quickly perked up and followed. They traveled in silence until Su-Yun's direction deviated from a straight line and he occasionally turned a corner, at which point the two of them breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goodness. I was wondering how there could be any good stuff. So he was just looking for something, the old tortoise said with a smile. The god of rain also smiled and nodded hurriedly. Flying ahead, Su-Yun turned to them and said, "Hurry up." The god of storms quickly led the old tortoise and chased after them. However, just as they were about to reach Su-Yun, he turned his head and inadvertently discovered something. Huh? What's this? In the distance, besides the ruins, a familiar, glittering object appeared in a corner of a wall. Curious, he immediately flew over. A crystal of faith. The old tortoise and the god of storms, who were following behind, widened their eyes in surprise and exclaimed instinctively. Su-Yun's eyes lit up, and he quickly waved his hand, throwing away everything that was pressing on the crystal of faith. Boom! A loud noise, Dust filled the air. But they didn't pay attention to that at the moment. Their attention was already drawn to the glittering crystal of faith on the ground. In that small patch of ground, there were scattered crystals of faith, as if someone had carelessly dropped them and hadn't had time to pick them up. What great luck! Su-Yun smiled, and without a word, a white light emanated from his body as he quickly gathered all the faith crystals on the ground. He counted them and assessed their strength. 1, 2, 3, 25 level 3 faith crystals, 7 level 2 faith crystals, and 10 level 1 faith crystals. Amidst the surprised expressions of the old tortoise and the other, Su-Yun happily announced his haul. It was like finding $100 for free on the ground in modern times. He was in a great mood. The old tortoise and the god of rain blushed, their eyes filled with embarrassment and shame. They had just been saying how could there be anything good, and that the god of light was still searching. And now, they had found something so easily. It was a slap in the face. Their cheeks felt burning. God of light, you're so lucky, haha. The god of rain forced a laugh, barely containing his embarrassment. Su-Yun nodded, modestly saying, I just happen to be a bit lucky. You don't need to mind too much. Hearing this, the old tortoise's eyes lit up, as if it had received some comfort. I see. But God of light, your luck is pretty good too, to be so fortunate as to find these faith crystals, the old tortoise said somewhat sourly. The god of rain looked at the faith crystals with envy, feeling a pang of jealousy as well. Please vote. Oh. Chapter 182 Restoring the Flower. Seeing their expressions, Su-Yun couldn't help but find it amusing. After a moment's thought, he suddenly separated all the level 1 and 2 faith crystals and divided them equally between the old tortoise and the god of storms. Since everyone has a share, these are for you. After all, they found these things together, so it would be unreasonable not to share some. In any case, level 1 and 2 faith crystals were of little use to him, having them or not made little difference. But while it was true for him, it was different for the old tortoise and the other two. Looking at the faith crystals floating in front of them, their faces lit up with surprise and joy. God of light, you're so kind. The old tortoise couldn't wait and immediately shoveled the faith crystals in front of him into its claws. Thank you. The god of storms also thanked him excitedly. As a level 2 god, the level 1 and 2 faith crystals in front of him were a huge sum of money, and he was filled with gratitude. Seeing their excited expressions, Su-Yun smiled slightly and said, let's continue searching. The two gods and the beast continued to explore their surroundings. After flying for more than 10 minutes, the two old turtles following behind gazed at the retreating figure of the god of light and couldn't help but sigh. Judging from the god of light's appearance, if I didn't know better, I would have thought he was going to retrieve some treasure, like before, the old turtle lamented. It seems our luck with the previous coincidences has run out, the god of rain chimed in with a laugh. Let's search slowly. With time, we'll eventually find something. After flying for another 20 minutes, the two old turtles had given up on any lingering hope and unconsciously shook their heads. Just then, a surprising scene unfolded at Su-Yun's location ahead. Several evil creatures were attacking a spot where an invisible shield existed. Upon closer inspection, their faces were filled with astonishment and surprise. Clusters of vibrant purple flowers swayed gently within the invisible shield, resembling small daisies, a sight to behold. However, the gods and beasts present were not attracted by the flowers' appearance. What drew them was their essence. Divinely bestowed plants, and a whole bunch of them. The god of rain's mouth gaped open in an O shape, his eyes wide with astonishment. These are, the old tortoise stared at the divinely bestowed plants, his eyes first filled with surprise, then with delight. Just as Su-Yun was marveling at the effectiveness of his blessing spell, several evil creatures in the distance spotted them and attacked without a word. Various colorful and bizarre attacks rained down upon them. Su-Yun sensed the intensity of the auras and found they were all level 3 or lower. Holy flame! With that, a milky white holy flame surged into the sky, engulfing the evil creatures. Puff puff puff. The evil creature's energy struck the flames, splashing like water droplets, instantly swallowed up. Given the difference in strength, no matter how powerful their attacks were, they had no power to resist Su-Yun's holy flame. Not only were their attacks submerged, but the flames also targeted their bodies. Terror filled the evil creatures' eyes, and after their bodies were engulfed by the holy flame, shrill screams rang out. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Before long, the sounds gradually faded away, and all the evil creatures were annihilated by Su-Yun's flames. After eliminating the evil creatures, Su-yoon turned his gaze to the flowers, and with a thought, continued to manipulate the flames, heading towards the invisible shield. Ripples spread, and the entire shield immediately became visible. This shield was not of a high level, and after some time, with a loud cracking and booming sound, the entire shield shattered, scattering into specks of fluorescent light that drifted in the air. Withdrawing the flames, Su-yoon and the others flew towards the flower bushes. It really is a restoration flower. After observing it up close, the old tortoise exclaimed in surprise. A restoration flower? Su-yoon and the god of rain looked at him in confusion. The old tortoise jumped excitedly, explaining, "These flowers can heal injuries." Su-yoon frowned slightly, giving him a strange look. "It's just healing injuries, why is he so excited?" Thinking this, he asked doubtfully, "There shouldn't be more than that, right?" The old tortoise nodded happily and said, "Of course I'm excited. This flower is called the restoration flower because it can not only heal ordinary injuries, but even someone like me with depleted strength can quickly regain their former power with it. There are so many here, I can definitely recover quickly." He was overjoyed. Su-yoon and the god of rain couldn't help but look at the purple flowers, their eyes showing surprise. "God of light, this," the old tortoise finished speaking and looked at Su-yoon expectantly, his meaning self-evident. Su-yoon glanced at him, pondered for a moment, and then looked at the number of flowers, finding that there were about 40 in each cluster, an astonishing number. "Since these can be useful to you, then you can have most of them." The old tortoise's recovery was also very beneficial to him. With a beast equivalent to a 4th-level god guarding the tribe, and even using his own power of light, the tribe was much safer. Su-yoon waved his hand, and white light emanated from his body, pulling the purple restoration flowers out of this oil one by one. Of course, to prevent them from withering, he left a small clump of oil around the roots. With a wave of his hand, he divided the flowers into 3 groups. He kept a dozen or so for himself, the god of rain received 10, and the remaining 20 were presented to the old tortoise. As soon as the flowers arrived, the old tortoise eagerly opened its mouth and snapped one of the purple flowers in half, swallowing it whole, stem and all. After happily finishing the restoration flower, feeling a growing thirst within him, he quickly grasped the faith crystal with his claws and began absorbing it. As the power of light within him rapidly increased, he looked at the remaining restoration flowers, a troubled expression flashing in his eyes. He turned to the god of rain, who was happily gazing at the restoration flowers, and asked, "Do you still have that bag?" "No," the god of rain replied awkwardly, scratching his head. "I'll keep them for you." Su-yoon shook his head, and with a wave of his hand, he took most of the restoration flowers, leaving only a few for the old tortoise, who looked grateful. After storing the items, the 2 gods and the beast continued their journey. Along the way, the old tortoise couldn't help but exclaim, "God of light, your luck is just too good. You always seem to have such lucky coincidences." Chapter 183 You are God's favorite son. The god of rain, standing to the side, enviously exclaimed, "Such a coincidence. I wish I had so many coincidences." "Yes," the old tortoise agreed, "how many times has this happened? I feel like this is the god of light's home. There are good things everywhere, and he can find them as long as he looks, including the previous divine tree. They had collected items 4 times in just 1 or 2 hours, which was unbelievable." The god of rain couldn't help but ask, "God of light, did you know beforehand that these places would have good things?" Su-yoon's lips twitched slightly, and he told the truth. "No, it really was a coincidence." Hearing the word coincidence again, this time the old tortoise and the other man didn't feel comforted, but instead felt extremely bitter. "Is that so? You're really lucky." The old tortoise gave an awkward laugh. The god of rain was so jealous he couldn't speak. Su-yoon shook his head speechlessly, seeing their faces full of resentment and complaints, and couldn't help but comfort them. "Alright, it shouldn't be so easy to encounter them anymore, so don't worry." Feeling that the blessing spell only had a dozen minutes left, he spoke the truth. Before the words were even finished, and before the 2 old turtles could offer any opinion, a level 2 evil creature appeared on the road. Su-yoon saw it and casually emitted a beam of white light. Boom! In an instant, the level 2 evil creature was blasted into pieces. The 2 old turtles didn't pay much attention, but just as they were about to turn back and continue on their way, a fragmented, transparent object suddenly emerged from where the evil creature had died. "This is..." They examined it closely. "A soul," the old turtle murmured in confusion. "That's strange. How did this low-level evil creature manage to leave behind a soul?" It's not a soul gem. Oh. The scene fell silent. The two gods and the turtle, a look of utter astonishment instantly appeared on their faces. Hey, I was just saying, you're not serious, are you? The old turtle cried out in alarm. The god of rain stared wide-eyed at the soul drifting away in one direction. Let's go, Su-Yun quickly said. Without further ado, the three of them hurriedly chased after the evil creature, wanting to see where it was going. A moment later, when they saw the soul rest on the ground, then float towards the surface, and in a flash, the evil soul vanished without a trace, they were startled. They hurriedly looked down, and what they saw was astonishing. A dazzling orange gem lay there quietly. Beside it lay a desiccated corpse, the gem lying not far from its hand. The soul gem, the old tortoise exclaimed, his eyes wide. It really is the soul gem. The god of storms, who had been hesitant, suddenly had his eyes bulge, almost popping out of their sockets, filled with shock. Su-Yun used his white light to swiftly pick up the orange-yellow soul gem from the ground. Looking at the orange gem, about half the size of a thumb, irregularly shaped and completely unpolished, Su-Yun and the others fell silent. After a while, the old tortoise couldn't hold back any longer. He remembered the words the god of light had told them to be at ease. I'm not at ease, and it's not a coincidence, he said numbly. Kid, tell me the truth, are you God's favorite son? How many times has this happened? This is unbelievable luck. Old Turtle was incredibly suspicious. Maybe the god of light really was God's favorite son, otherwise how could he receive so many benefits one after another? Yet, the god of rain muttered to himself, equally numb. Obtaining the soul gem so easily, if they were modern people, they would definitely exclaim holy crap, this is inhuman. This is truly unbelievable. It's really a blow to them. At first, the god of rain thought that compared to the god of light's luck, he was only slightly less fortunate. But now, looking at it again, it wasn't just slightly less, it was a huge difference. Old Turtle and the other two inwardly cried out in frustration, almost turning into lemons on the spot. Ahem, Su-Yun coughed a few times, embarrassed. Hearing their words, he also felt a little embarrassed. Was I too provocative? Su-Yun blinked, his expression full of innocence. Hearing his cough and seeing what he was about to say, the old tortoise spoke up excitedly before he could. Kid, don't tell me it was just a coincidence, we absolutely won't believe it, you're not a normal god. The god of rain quickly nodded in agreement. Su-Yun blinked innocently again, and could only change the subject. Let's go see that corpse. I wonder who he is and how he possesses the soul gem. Saying this, in order not to further provoke them, Su-Yun quickly flew to the ground and began to examine the desiccated corpse. The old tortoise and the god of rain followed, somewhat dazed and with uneasy expressions. The corpse on the ground was wearing familiar clothes, almost identical to those worn by the previous desiccated corpses. However, unlike them, Su-Yun did not sense any strange aura on it, it was just an ordinary corpse. Judging from its withered, dark yellow, and vague appearance, this corpse was a female corpse. Su-Yun looked her over carefully, but found nothing useful, not even anything in her hands. This corpse is really poor, Su-Yun shook his head. But thinking about it, it made sense. He had only found this special item from one of the 3 level 5 corpses he had found before. It was clearly not an ordinary item, it belonged to the kind of valuable and rare things. Old Turtle, do you recognize her? Su-Yun asked. The old turtle's eyes were lifeless, and it said weakly, no, she doesn't have anything good on her. Since you don't recognize her, let's just leave it at that. Let's go, Su-Yun said after a moment of thought. Oh, okay, the old turtle and the other turtle answered weakly, clearly still not recovered. Let's go. The two gods and the turtle continued on their way. Along the way, Su-Yun curiously examined the soul gem, and then, on a whim, he prepared to disinfect it. In an instant, a dazzling light flashed, bringing the old turtle and the god of rain back to their senses. After a while, when the white light subsided, the soul gem reappeared. Compared to before, it was now not only more dazzling, but the dust and dirt that had been clinging to the gem had also completely disappeared. After disinfection, Su-Yun's obsessive-compulsive disorder subsided. He reached out and caught the soul gem, then immediately channeled his divine power into it. He wanted to see if the soul gem's effects were as powerful as the old tortoise had described. In an instant, the soul gem emitted a dazzling orange light, thanks to Sunglasses Wine Lover for the 100 Kidian coins donation. Chapter 184 Gem Effects and Metal Minerals. As soon as his divine power entered, Su-Yun was somewhat surprised to find that there was no residual divine power within the soul gem. Therefore, there was no sense of repulsion, and he easily penetrated it. A message appeared in his mind, and Su-Yun pondered for a moment. The effect of this soul gem was similar to what the old tortoise had described. It could absorb the souls of recently deceased creatures within a certain range. The range depended entirely on the user's divine power strength. The stronger the divine power, the larger the range, and vice versa. In addition, the soul gem would instinctively absorb souls within a small area, seemingly driven by its own spirituality, wanting to absorb souls to become stronger. The scene of attracting the souls of evil creatures earlier was due to the soul gem's instinct. Besides attracting souls, this gem also had a minor ability derived from this power. It could mark a creature, and when the target died, no matter how far away, its soul would be attracted to the soul gem. After Su-Yun poured his divine power into it, he naturally gained control of the artifact. For example, he could control it to only attract souls without digesting them. Putting everything else aside, this artifact, when paired with his soul tree, is a perfect match. On the battlefield, it would be incredibly effective. After playing with it for a while, Su-Yun, under the old tortoise's envious gazes, stored it in his special ring. Sensing the fading blessing spell, Su-Yun glanced at the defeated old tortoise and the god of rain, and decided to temporarily stop attacking them. But just when he thought everything would be fine in the last bit of time, they flew to a strange place. The ground below them had changed, a gray-white rock stood out prominently. And just as they arrived, the blessing spell's effect dissipated. "This is..." Su-Yun stared at the rock in surprise. "What's wrong?" the old tortoise and the god of rain asked, looking at him curiously. Su-Yun carefully examined the mottled rock, feeling a sense of familiarity. "This is some kind of ore," he was somewhat surprised, his eyes changing as he looked at the stones. Although he was still a little uncertain, considering the effect of the blessing spell, he knew the stones underground couldn't be cheap. "I'm not sure, wait a moment," Su-Yun said to them, then waved his hand and cast a divine spell. Holy Flame. Whoosh, a massive, surging milky white flame shot straight towards the ground. A wave of intense heat washed over them, making the old tortoise and the god of rain feel uncomfortable and almost unable to bear it. "Why are you burning stones? What's the god of light doing?" the old tortoise muttered, pulling his claws back. Su-Yun ignored him, focusing on burning the stones. Under the intense heat and the special effect of the holy flame, the ordinary rocks quickly vanished. Soon, a large patch of white substance emerged below, much to the astonishment of the old tortoise and the god of rain. "So it really is metal," Su-Yun murmured. To prove his point, he waved his hand, and a fist-sized ball of white, radiating intense heat immediately floated before him. "Cool it down with water," Su-Yun commanded the god of rain after shaping the white ball into a sword. "Oh," the god of rain nodded blankly, and a large spray of rain poured onto the white ball. Sizzle, a cloud of steam rose, and the white ball cooled rapidly amidst the swirling mist. When the mist dissipated, a somewhat pitted white sword blank appeared before them. Seeing its unsightly appearance, the old tortoise grinned, while the god of rain showed disappointment. Su-Yun, however, was different. A hint of joy appeared on his face. He quickly reached out and flicked the white longsword forcefully. Bang! A metallic clang rang out immediately. "It really is metal, and its hardness is extraordinary," Su-Yun said confidently. "Metal?" The god of rain and the old tortoise were somewhat puzzled. Su-Yun explained, "The chains that were on the old tortoise were probably some kind of special metal, and this white stuff is also a metal." "What?" Without the comparison, the god of rain was surprised to hear that both the chains and this were metal. The old tortoise murmured, "No wonder this thing felt familiar. They had witnessed the strangeness and power of the chains." Su-Yun succinctly explained again, "This white metal can be made into weapons that are stronger and sharper than stone and bone knives." He handed the longsword to the two, gesturing for them to try it. Several crisp metallic clanging sounds immediately rang out. It's really hard. Although they hadn't used their full strength, they knew its sturdiness was definitely no weaker than a stone knife. With a little forging, it would definitely be a formidable weapon. Ignoring the two who were still in shock, Su-Yun looked at the ground. After rapid forging, the grayish-white ore had mostly turned into pools of white ore. With a wave of his hand, the rocks instantly gathered together. Then he arranged them into 3 spheres, 1 large and 2 small. Since there wasn't much ore underneath, the white metal, when gathered together, wasn't very large, only about 5 or 6 meters in size. After their initial shock, the old tortoise and the god of rain returned to their numb expressions. "How many times has this happened?" the old tortoise muttered absent-mindedly. He hadn't paid much attention to the rocks before, but after the god of light's explanation, it was clear that the white metal was also a treasure. Sure enough, it happened again. The god of light could find treasures just by walking in any direction. Every time it was such a coincidence, it was making them question their existence. Ahem. Su-Yun coughed a few times, quickly dividing the white metal as usual. He took 70%, while the old tortoise and the god of rain each took 15%. Looking at the white metal they had been allocated, Stormy Rain exclaimed, "Being with you, god of light, aside from some discomfort, has truly been incredibly beneficial. If I didn't know it was impossible, I'd suspect this ruin was overflowing with treasures." Su-Yun smiled but remained silent, feeling that saying anything would only discourage them. Once the white metal had cooled, they collected it. Afterward, Su-Yun shook his head. "Forget it, I won't discourage these two. To maintain my image as a normal god, I'll refrain from casting any blessings." And so, Su-Yun led the way, with the old tortoise and the god of stormy rain following behind, looking completely numb. Time passed quickly. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 185, Leaving the Sea God's Ruins. Without the blessing spell, they indeed returned to their unlucky state. Perhaps the surrounding treasures were almost all taken. In any case, they didn't encounter a single good item along the way. Su-Yun seemed unfazed, but the two old turtles behind him looked on with astonishment. They then looked at Su-Yun with suspicion. Could it be that the god of light is afraid of discouraging us and deliberately not searching diligently? They looked at Su-Yun with a mixture of regret and gratitude. Yes, having found nothing, they felt the god of light was acting strangely. This was clearly not his usual luck. Considering the comforting words the god of light had given them earlier, they had reason to believe that he was afraid they would lose face, hence his lack of effort in the search. Otherwise, how could they not have encountered a single good item? If Su-Yun knew what they were thinking, he would definitely laugh and cry at the same time, then praise their accurate guess. Of course, the most important reason was that he was afraid that casting too many blessing spells would give them away and reveal some clues. After all, there were no powerful enemies, yet they were wasting divine power casting a blessing spell every now and then. Something seemed off. Finding nothing of value, Su-Yun, along with the two old turtles, flew back to where they had initially parted ways. Soon, as they approached their destination, they saw the fire god and the others already waiting there, clearly anticipating their arrival. Su-Yun quickened his pace, arriving in the blink of an eye. "You've come," the fire god exclaimed happily, eagerly asking, "How was it? Did you find anything good?" The forest god and the wind god, hearing this, immediately perked up their ears, watching them curiously. Su-Yun opened his mouth, but before he could speak, the two old turtles began to recount the events. Under Su-Yun's speechless expression, they omitted some crucial details and recounted everything in detail. What? This kind of luck? As expected, the fire god and the others all showed expressions of shock. Every short while, he would find something. It seemed this ruin was full of treasures. How come they couldn't find anything like it? They thought they had to search for a long time and have a lot of luck to find anything, while the god of light just walked around and found good things waiting for them. They were speechless. In an instant, several more envious people appeared at the scene, looking at Su-Yun with disbelief, envy, and jealousy, wishing they could take his place. Look at this god, not only is he powerful, but his luck is also insane. Does he even allow ordinary gods like them to live? The two old turtles, seeing that the god of fire and the others were experiencing the same frustration as them, couldn't help but show a relieved expression. Su-Yun weakly tried to explain. However, his explanations not only had no effect, but also made the god of fire and the others roll their eyes showing the fire of shared hatred for the unlucky. In their minds, Su-Yun's level of inviolability increased even more. Not only is his strength insane, but his luck is insane too. Unbeatable. Su-Yun's lips twitched slightly. "If only I had half your strength and luck," the god of fire sighed for a moment, then said, "All right, Let's leave the ruins. The gods nodded and flew together towards the outer perimeter of the ruins. Led by the god of fire, they soon arrived at the special rift on the outskirts of the ruins. However, upon arriving, they were somewhat surprised to find a man in his 30s with a sinister face floating not far in front of the special rift. Suyun's eyes narrowed, and after quickly sizing him up, he said, "It's the god of fear, it's him." The gods were initially startled, then relaxed. With so many of them, they had no reason to fear the god of fear. On the contrary, it should be the god of fear who feared them. And the truth was pretty much as they expected. When the god of fear saw them, he was first taken aback, then his face became somewhat flustered. "It's you," he exclaimed. He had originally planned to wait for the god of shadow and the god of blood here, but he never expected that they would be the ones to arrive first. Especially Suyun in the group, the first thing that caught his eye was Suyun's pupils shrinking, and he instinctively felt fear. However, he only took a step back before barely relaxing. He remembered that the exit of the ruins was behind him, and he wasn't worried about being blocked at such a short distance. He had that much confidence. "How did you get here?" the god of fear asked preemptively. "Shouldn't we be asking you?" the god of gale sneered. "You came in with those two, shadow and blood, didn't you?" "How did you know?" the god of fear asked, somewhat taken aback. "How?" the god of gale said disdainfully. "They're already dead at the hands of the god of light, don't you think?" "Impossible." The god of fear's expression changed, looking at Suyun in disbelief. "Believe it or not, but you'll stay here too," Gale said, his voice filled with murderous intent. As he spoke, everyone, including Suyun, tacitly prepared to attack. But the moment they moved, the god of fear, who had been watching them with extreme vigilance, moved even faster than they did. The moment their divine spell was unleashed, the god of fear plunged straight into the special rift vortex. "Chase!" The gods hastily stopped what they were doing and, in the blink of an eye, also rushed into the special rift. Outside, the god of fear had just emerged from the vortex when he frantically flew forward. However, before flying away, he casually cast a divine spell behind him. Fear wave, with a wave of his hand, a vast, eerie green wave of light erupted from his hand and enveloped the special rift. After casting the spell, still feeling uneasy, the god of fear suddenly gritted his teeth and swiftly pulled a black bead from his storage bag. This bead was similar to the one he had used against the god of light. He had obtained it by chance, and both were one-time use items. Powerful enough that even if it couldn't defeat them all, it could at least hold them off for a short while. For the sake of his life, he didn't hesitate and threw it towards the special rift in the next second. At that very moment, Suyun and the others also emerged from the special rift. Seeing this, the god of fear turned and fled in terror, shouting inwardly, "Explode!" Suyun, barely out of the room and before he could even defend himself, paled. A ghostly green light enveloped them. The god of fear's timing was perfect. They didn't even have time to prepare their defenses before being struck. Immediately after being hit, a nameless fear gripped them. Looking at the fleeing god of fear, they saw him as something terrifying, filled with dread. Before they could recover from their fear, the black bead that approached them exploded. Boom. 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 Chapter 186 Thunder Tribe. A dense wave of darkness erupted instantly, quickly engulfing them. Suyun's expression changed. Seeing the small black sphere, he knew something was wrong, having experienced its power before. However, this time seemed different. Suyun noticed with some confusion that this bead's effect was different from the previous one. The dark energy mist was thicker, and its effect was much stronger. Even the light around him seemed to be swallowed by the darkness, dimming considerably. "What is this? Damn it!" In an instant, several bewildered voices rang out from the Vulcan. The dark energy suppressed them, rendering them unable to move, as if they were trapped in quagmire, making movement extremely difficult. Suyun frowned. Just as he was about to unleash his divine flames to dissolve the dark energy, a red light flashed beside him. The Vulcan had used divine magic first, enveloping himself in flames. That insidious god of fear, the Vulcan cursed. His firelight barely illuminated a small area of vision. Suyun glanced at the god of fire beside him, shook his head, and also unleashed his divine magic. "Holy flame!" a detached voice rang out, causing the nearby god of fire to instinctively turn his head. The moment he looked, he froze. The radiance emanating from Suyun had been significantly dimmed by the invasion of dark energy, causing his previously concealed appearance to become slightly blurred. In his daze, the god of fire saw the face of the god of light, his tiger-like eyes widening instantly, his lips, surrounded by a red beard, parting slightly, his gaze becoming utterly vacant. However, before he could look any longer, Suyun's holy flame had already erupted. The surging milky white flames burned away the dark energy, and with a blessing of divine attributes, the dark energy was quickly forced back. And at that moment, the light suppressed by darkness around Suyun returned, and his perfect face, previously obscured, was once again concealed. After repelling the surrounding dark energy, Suyun noticed the god of fire's gaze and glanced at him with a puzzled expression. "What's wrong?" Seeing the god of light looking at him, the god of fire blushed and said, "And nothing." Suyun frowned slightly, looking at him suspiciously, somewhat puzzled. He focused on dealing with the black mist. While dealing with the dark energy, the god of fire began to be distracted, and this time he thought of the god of light's appearance that he had just seen. He swore that he had never seen such a beautiful face, and even the forest god, whom he had always thought was the most beautiful, paled in comparison to the god of light. He really couldn't describe the face he saw, just one glance, and he felt as if his mind had been drawn in, deeply immersed in it. While the god of fire was in a daze, the gods, working together, quickly dealt with the dark energy, which was very stubborn. However, after they dealt with the black mist, looking at the scene ahead where they couldn't see a single hair, they all cursed inwardly that the god of fear had really run away quickly. "He's lucky," the god of gale roared. "Sigh, never mind." The god of forest shook his head and said, "The god of fear has escaped, and shadow and blood died in the ruins this time. He no longer poses much of a threat to us." "You're right." Gale looked at the beautiful god of forest and couldn't help but smile and agree. After speaking, he suddenly felt a little quiet. He thought for a moment and understood what was going on. Apart from the god of light, who didn't talk much, the god of fire, who usually liked to chime in, hadn't said a word. Thinking of this, he turned to look at the god of fire with some doubt, and then strangely saw that the god of fire was staring blankly, not knowing what was going on. "God of fire, what's wrong?" The god of gale patted his shoulder. The god of fire was startled and said stiffly in a rough voice, "Nothing." "What's wrong, you?" The god of gale wondered why the usually forthright and carefree god of fire seemed so strange. The god of forest showed concern on his face and asked a few questions. However, the fire god, who usually harbored a slight unease towards the forest goddess and listened attentively to everything she said, was now lost in thought again while the forest goddess was speaking, much to the bewilderment of both the forest goddess and the wind goddess. Seeing this, the wind goddess had no choice but to speak up herself. "Where are you going next?" "Back to your tribe." As she spoke, she looked at Suyun and the others. "Yes," Suyun nodded, "I'm taking the old tortoise back to the tribe." "What about you?" "I'm going back too," the rain god agreed, chuckling as he thought of the spoils from the ruins. The forest goddess nodded in agreement. Only the fire god remained unanswered, and all eyes turned to him. Hearing that the light god was going back, the fire god suggested, "Light god, I think our two tribes could establish friendly relations. I found some of your tribe's specialties quite appealing. Our tribes could trade these regularly." With that, he grinned at the light god, awaiting his reply. Suyun gave him a strange look, then pondered for a moment and nodded. "Okay, that's fine. This matter would also benefit his tribe, so naturally he wouldn't disagree. It would be a disservice to the selfless spirit of a fat sheep offering itself up without taking advantage of it." Hearing their discussion, the forest god, the gale god, and the rain god's eyes lit up. The light god's displayed strength and abnormal luck in the ruins made him worthy of their active friendship. And now, hearing the fire god mention some special products, although they didn't know what they were, they still readily agreed. "This suggestion is good. I think our gale tribe, forest," the three gale gods immediately spoke up with smiles. "When I have time, I will send my tribe's followers to visit your tribe, light god," the forest god said with a smile. "That's right," the gale god and the rain god nodded quickly. Several more fat sheep jumped into the pot on their own. Suyun, of course, wouldn't refuse such a good thing, readily agreeing with a smile. "Welcome, your believers are always welcome to visit. In that case, I'll be going now." The forest god smiled, waved, and turned to fly away. The gale god greeted him and also flew towards his tribe. Before leaving, the rain god said, "Next time you go somewhere, don't forget me. I'd like to ride your luck." Suyun smiled and nodded. After the rain god finished speaking, he turned and left, leaving only old turtle Suyun and the fire god. "We're going the same way, let's go together," Suyun said to the fire god. Since he wasn't very familiar with this area, he naturally chose the route back to the fire god's tribe. The fire god nodded quickly. After saying that, the three of them headed towards the fire god's tribe. Along the way, the fire god would occasionally glance at Suyun, seemingly wanting to say something but ultimately holding back. They traveled in silence, and soon returned to the fire god tribe. As soon as they arrived, the fire god tribesmen waiting outside spotted them and cried out in delight. "It's the fire god! The great fire god has returned!" These rough men's loud voices spread like wildfire, and the tribesmen rushed out to greet them. Just as Suyun was about to say goodbye, the fire god chieftain and priest, who had come out to greet him, emerged from the tribe. The fire god priest first respectfully greeted the fire god, then addressed Suyun, "Honorable god of light of the Yanhuan tribe, greetings." Suyun nodded indifferently, and was about to say something when the fire god priest's next words made him pause, a look of surprise flashing across his face. "Great fire god, not long ago, an envoy from the Thunder tribe visited our tribe," the fire god priest said respectfully. Oh, a hint of surprise flashed in Vulcan's eyes, and he couldn't help but ask, "What about the envoy from the Thunder tribe?" "The envoy has already left," the Vulcan priest said. "However, before he left, he asked me to give you his regards, and also to talk about that matter." "I see," Vulcan murmured to himself. Suyun, standing to the side, looked puzzled, wondering what kind of riddle the two were playing. What was this Thunder tribe? Judging from Vulcan's expression, he seems to value that Thunder tribe quite a bit. Could it be? His eyelids twitched slightly, and a guess formed in his mind. A tribe of fourth-level gods? After a moment of shock, he couldn't help but ask, "Vulcan, what were you talking about just now?" "The Thunder tribe is." Hearing his question, Vulcan snapped out of his reverie, grinned, and said, "I almost forgot, god of light, you were indeed qualified to participate in this matter long ago?" "Qualified? Yes, qualified," Vulcan nodded and said, "Only large tribes with more than 10,000 people are qualified to participate in this matter." Before Suyun could ask further, he continued, "The Thunder tribe that my priest mentioned is a tribe much stronger than ours. Most importantly, the Thunder god of the Thunder tribe is a fifth-level god." "A fifth-level god?" Suyun's expression changed, becoming serious. This was completely different from what he had initially expected. He had thought it was a fourth-level god, but it turned out to be a fifth-level god. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel apprehensive. If it was a fourth-level god, it wouldn't be so bad, but a fifth-level god was a different story. Even with his current ability to barely overcome a higher level, he would be utterly vulnerable against a fifth-level god. The fundamental difference between them was at least 100 times greater. With such a huge gap, even if he were incredibly strong, he would absolutely not be able to defeat the opponent. Moreover, gods are different from ordinary creatures. Who knows what strange divine arts or even powerful artifacts the other party might possess. These factors made the opponent even more difficult to deal with. The god of light's reaction was as expected, and the god of fire sighed inwardly. To be honest, the god of light was relatively calm, at least not to the point of exclaiming in shock. You see, when he first heard it, he thought it was fake, and even after it was confirmed, he was still shocked for a long time before recovering. Of course, if he knew that Suyun was already secretly calculating the difference between them and wondering if he could defeat the opponent, then he wouldn't have his current calm expression. He would definitely be spitting out blood, staring at him like he was a monster. After calming down, Suyun asked, "What are you talking about?" The fire god explained, "Every year when all things revive, the Thunder god invites large tribes with over 10,000 members to his tribe for exchanges and to conduct some competitions." Spring, Suyun pondered, then realized a key point. Competitions? What kind of competitions? "Competitions between tribal believers," the fire god said in a deep voice. Suyun's expression changed slightly upon hearing this, his mind racing. In a short time, he basically understood the situation. In his view, the so-called Thunder god's invitation to exchange was purely an excuse. The more important thing was the competition between believers. And that was a problem. How weak could the believers of a tribe possessing a fifth-level god be? Putting aside everything else, their advantage over these tribes would be enormous. They should win more often than lose. Could the Thunder god be showing off? Suyun narrowed his eyes, pondering to himself. If it wasn't a coincidence, the Thunder god's purpose was definitely a show of force. He was subtly warning them, using the disparity in numbers among his followers to make them understand the vast difference between them and avoid making small mistakes. The fire god looked at him and said, "Light god, although your tribe's numbers are insufficient, you, as a third-level god, have met the standard. They will definitely notice you during this time and will send people to your tribe to contact you. Be careful not to clash with them, or it will be very troublesome." Hearing the fire god's concerned reminder, Suyun, though non-committal, nodded gratefully. After all, it was a well-intentioned reminder. "Looks like I need to improve my strength as soon as possible." Suyun gritted his teeth. This feeling of being subtly coerced was truly uncomfortable. Ultimately, it was a matter of insufficient strength. He planned to return to the modern world after returning to his tribe. Besides searching for those ancient artifacts to see if they could be used, he also wanted to increase his followers to improve his strength. If the fire god was right, there were still several months until the so-called competition, enough time for him to improve his strength. As the two were talking, the fire god's followers below, hearing the implications of their words, were all shocked. The god of light, like the great fire god, would soon be invited by the thunder tribe? Did that mean the god of light's strength was in no way inferior to the great fire god? This was completely different from their previous understanding of the small tribal gods. Chapter 187 The god of light is so strong. The fire god chieftain and priest, along with a few traveling merchants who had visited the Yanhuang tribe, were even more shocked than the others. The fire god chieftain was stunned. Initially, he had praised the Yanhuang tribe, saying it was a tribe worth establishing diplomatic relations with. But even then, his high regard for the Yanhuang tribe carried a condescending tone, with his own fire god tribe in control. Now, that small tribe had suddenly risen to the same status as their fire god tribe. He couldn't imagine how complex and unbelievable it was. The fire god priest thought similarly. He had muttered that the Yanhuang tribe seemed quite extraordinary, and now it was no wonder. With such a powerful god, how could it be simple, he thought with a sigh. Remembering how he had publicly stated that under this god's leadership, the Yanhuang tribe would surely rise to the same level as the fire god tribe, he blushed. The god of light was so powerful that he could make the Yanhuang tribe comparable to their fire god tribe. There was no need for them to rise further, it was pure wishful thinking. He had even used the special potential of the Yanhuang tribe to indirectly suppress the pride of his people. Thinking about it now, it was incredibly embarrassing. He wished he could go back and stop himself from speaking. Wasn't that shameful? Besides the chief and priest, Yan and a few other young people from the fire god tribe, including Green Spot, were also recalling things. Back then, they were arrogant and secretly disdainful, looking down on what the Yanhuang tribesman named Stone had said. He claimed the Yanhuang tribe could soon rival their fire god tribe, which they initially thought was nonsense and utter folly. They even declared that the Yanhuang tribe would need at least several hundred years of development to catch up. Now, looking back, the more dismissive they had been then, the more embarrassed they felt, wishing they could disappear into a hole. Besides them, Arm in the crowd also remembered his visit to the Yanhuang tribe and hearing the Yanhuang people say that the god of light had defeated the god of shadow. At that time, he thought that if the god of shadow had truly come, the Yanhuang tribe would have no reason to exist, and even suspected that the warriors of the god of shadow had come, never believing it. Then he heard even more exaggerated stories, like the god of light defeating the god of shadow, and the god of shadow escaping. He thought it was all fake, that the Yanhuang people were lying. He even sighed inwardly, thinking those Yanhuang people were truly ignorant, too blindly devoted to their god, and often spouting nonsense. Now, thinking back, he realized he was the foolish and arrogant one. The Yanhuang people had told him the truth, but he hadn't believed them. He really was a bit silly. Finally, after seeing the god of light, he felt he was very special, with extraordinary power, and secretly wondered if he was a tribal god in disguise. At the time, he was just thinking casually, but he hadn't expected to actually guess the truth. Luckily, I didn't disrespect the god of light back then, he thought to himself, relieved. Just thinking about offending a powerful god comparable to the god of fire made him tremble with relief. Suyun was talking with the god of fire, unaware of the complex and disbelieving thoughts of the fire god's people below. Even if he did know, he would probably just laugh it off. After basically understanding the situation, he took his leave. I'll keep that in mind. If the Thunder Tribe really invites me, then we'll meet again then, he said with a smile. Alright, the fire god nodded heartily, but after a moment's hesitation, he added, You're welcome to visit my fire god tribe anytime. You're always welcome, I will, Su Yun replied politely, seeing the fire god's pleased expression. After nodding, he lifted the old tortoise and flew quickly towards the Yanhuan tribe. The fire god watched his figure disappear from sight before turning his gaze back. Looking at the believers below, he pondered for a moment and issued a command. Believers, our fire god tribe can take the initiative to befriend the Yanhuan tribe, and we can increase the frequency of our trades with them. Hearing the fire god's biased words, the fire god tribesmen were somewhat shocked and confused. Seeing their expressions, the fire god explained briefly. Perhaps their tribe isn't as numerous as ours, but the god of light's strength is no weaker than mine, and his even far stronger. What? That god of light is that strong? A series of incredulous exclamations erupted from the fire god tribe. The fire god had always been portrayed as incredibly powerful, holding his own even against the gods of other major tribes. However, they were now hearing the fire god himself admit that the god of light was very powerful, possibly even stronger than their revered fire god. This was utterly unbelievable. The fire god knew that saying this might be difficult for them to accept immediately, but to avoid inadvertently offending the god of light, he had to continue. You know the Shadow tribe and the Blood tribe, right? He suddenly asked. The fire god tribe members all nodded. We know, they're like our fire god tribe, belonging to the same large tribe. It's just that these two tribes are prone to aggression, they're truly despicable. Just thinking about how their fire god tribe had recently been attacked by that damned Shadow tribe filled them with rage. As they gritted their teeth, astonishing words came from the fire god's mouth. The god of Shadow and the god of Blood have fallen, the fire god sighed. They were personally destroyed by the god of Light alone. The scene was filled with shock. Every member of the fire god tribe seemed to have heard something utterly unbelievable. Their faces were devoid of any expression other than shock. The god of light killed the god of shadow and the god of blood, no way! Exclamations of surprise fully expressed their feelings. The fire god's subsequent nod confirmed this fact, leaving their minds blank. The god of shadows and the god of blood, those were tribal gods comparable to the great god of fire, and they were annihilated by the god of light. And judging from the god of fire's words, he seemed to have done it all alone. This, they gasped in shock. The difficulty of this feat was beyond their comprehension. The power of the god of light, gasps of astonishment filled the air. Chapter 188 The Shock of the Fire God Clan. The god of fire shook his head and said, after the fall of the Blood tribe and the Shadow tribe, they will likely be in chaos internally. Use this time to gather information. These two tribes probably won't last much longer. His words were full of sighs. Without their gods, even with their large numbers, these two massive tribes, once their divine warrior's strength is exhausted, will eventually be divided up by their surrounding enemies and won't survive. This is why he revealed the god of light's achievements. He knew this couldn't be hidden for long anyway. Large tribes are different from small tribes. If something happens, it's hard to keep it a secret. Sooner or later, the god of light's power will be leaked by others. It's better for him to tell his people first, giving them time to react and avoid unintentionally offending the god of light, someone they can't afford to provoke. If something really happens, he can't protect them. The members of the god of fire's tribe exchanged glances, realizing that their opinion of the Yanhuan tribe was changing again and again. Especially the fire god chieftain and priests, as well as those who had visited the Yanhuan tribe like Being Yan, no longer harbored any contempt or arrogance. Good heavens, even if the Yanhuan tribe itself wasn't anything special, with the incredibly powerful god of light present, absolutely no one would dare provoke them. While the fire god was speaking to his people, several gods, including Kuangfeng, who were far away, returned to their tribe and unanimously said similar things. The key was to cultivate good relations with the Yanhuan tribe, and they mentioned the god of light's strength to warn the tribes to be cautious and avoid offending him, as things would become difficult to handle later. The old tortoise, who hadn't spoken the entire way, now looked at the god of light carrying him, his dark eyes darting around. I'm really curious about this kid's tribe. Is it as monstrous as this guy's? The old tortoise muttered to himself. Given the light god's monstrous strength, he couldn't fathom what his tribe was like. He was filled with curiosity and eager to see it. After thinking it over, he asked, Kid, are you really going to that thunder tribe? Aren't you afraid the thunder god will do something to you? If he attacks you, even if you're incredibly powerful, it'll be useless. Are you really that carefree? As a level 5 beast, he naturally understood the power of that level better than Su Yun. To put it bluntly, Even a tenth of the opponent's power could easily crush them. The difference between them was unbelievable. So he was genuinely curious whether the light god would actually participate. The feeling of having their lives in someone else's hands must be unbearable for gods like them. He was unsure of the light god's thoughts. However, after asking, he heard a statement that surprised and astonished him. Go? Why wouldn't I go? Su-Yun smiled nonchalantly. You're really ambitious, kid. The old tortoise shook its head speechlessly. Su-Yun smiled but didn't reply. Of course, he couldn't tell the old tortoise that he had already raised his strength to level 4 in just a few months. Once I reached level 4, and perhaps with some useful artifacts from the modern world, I should be able to barely protect myself. In that case, he naturally wouldn't object to going to the Thunder Tribe. As for advancing his level, he didn't intend to mention it yet. If he did, not only would it shock the old tortoise, but the tortoise might not even believe him, probably thinking he'd gone mad. Since that was the case, he'd tell the old tortoise after he advanced, which would be a small surprise for him. The leisurely old tortoise had no idea that a small surprise awaited him, but for the old tortoise, it was probably not a surprise at all, but a complete shock. After their conversation, the two didn't say anything more along the way. As they flew, Su-Yun grew tired of the monotonous flight and suddenly had a flash of inspiration, the idea of using divine magic popping into his head. Blessing spell. Without hesitation, he consumed 30% of his divine power to cast a blessing spell, amplifying his power by about double. A dazzling light emanated from him, startling the old tortoise beside him. Immediately after casting the spell, Su-Yun's flying speed more than doubled. Whoosh! A strong wind howled in his ears, and the dark shadows of trees flashed past in a straight line. He's really freakish, the old tortoise exclaimed in shock. Su-Yun was very satisfied with the effect. With a blessing spell's enhancement, his speed was now immeasurably faster. Time flew by quickly, and accompanied by the fierce wind, they flew back to the Yanhuang tribe in less than half an hour. Upon reaching the outskirts of the tribe, Su-Yun slowed down and descended from the air. Is this your tribe? The old tortoise asked, craning his neck and looking around incredulously. Or did you come to this small tribe for some business? He simply couldn't believe that the scene before him belonged to this monstrous creature beside him. Rows of beautiful wooden houses stood before them, nestled along a river not far from the village and surrounded by lush green trees, adding a touch of vibrancy and life to the place. The entire village exuded a fresh and pristine atmosphere. From a modern perspective, it was undoubtedly a rare and secluded haven, leaving a very positive impression. However, none of this changed the fact that the village was sparsely populated, a fact even more pronounced from the air. The old tortoise thought the village looked impressive, far beyond the norm for a small tribe, but the idea that it belonged to the monstrous god of light was simply unbelievable. He couldn't believe it. What am I thinking? How could this small village possibly be the god of light's village? The old tortoise lamented that he was overthinking things, wondering how such an absurd idea could even arise. But just as he was absolutely certain that this village wasn't the god of light's village, a few calm words left him speechless. You're right, this is indeed my village, Su-Yun said calmly. The old tortoise's eyes widened, his mouth gaped open, and he almost doubted his own existence. Although he had heard rumors in the ruins, he had thought they were jokes. Now, to actually see it and hear the god of light's recognition firsthand was a completely different story. Chapter 189 Returning to the Tribe. Are you serious? The old tortoise still hesitated. Yes, Su-Yun nodded calmly. Ignoring the stunned old tortoise, Su-Yun landed directly in the tribe with him. He was discovered by the tribe's people shortly after landing. The light surrounding him made him too conspicuous unless intentionally concealed. God is back! Exclamations of joy echoed throughout the Yanhuang tribe. Whether idle or busy, everyone dropped what they were doing and rushed towards him. Su-Yun smiled slightly, but to maintain some mystery and majesty, he placed the old tortoise on the ground and quickly returned to the divine stone space. The divine stone emitted a white light, which subsided after a moment. Seeing this, a hint of disappointment flashed across the tribe's people's expressions of joy. Once they recovered, they turned their gaze to the old tortoise near the divine stone. Looking at the giant tortoise, their eyes were filled with astonishment, and they gathered around, whispering amongst themselves. The old tortoise, being pointed at and talked about by the Yanhuang tribe members, turned pale. To be honest, he had initially been skeptical, but now, seeing the god of light enter a stone and sensing the familiar aura of power emanating from some of the surrounding people, He had no choice but to accept, incredulously, that this tribe truly belonged to the god of light. However, even though he believed it, the constant staring and pointing still annoyed the old tortoise. "What are you looking at? Haven't you ever seen your old tortoise before?" he grumbled. A gasp erupted from the crowd, and some children and women instinctively took a few steps back, looking frightened. The old tortoise's face darkened even more. Was he really that scary? He was just a little bigger and could talk a little more, wasn't that normal? He thought resentfully. Just then, two unusual people walked over from the crowd, immediately attracting his attention. A tall, burly, and rugged middle-aged man, dressed differently from his tribesmen, appeared to be the leader of the Yanhuan tribe. He glanced at him briefly and moved on, finding nothing particularly remarkable, unworthy of the old man's attention. When his gaze shifted to the old man beside him, he initially mistook him for an ordinary priest, but after a few more glances, he suddenly noticed something amiss. The priest himself was unremarkable, but the way he looked at the old man was strange, a familiar, indifferent gaze, like. Thinking about it, he suddenly shuddered. He felt this priest resembled the god of light. Before he could ponder further, Su-Yun glanced at the old tortoise and explained to the somewhat panicked tribesmen around him, "Don't panic, everyone." He first calmed the tribesmen slightly, then pointed to the old tortoise and said, "He is a divine beast brought by the gods, and will protect our tribe from now on. You don't need to be afraid of him." Upon hearing this, the Yanhuan tribesmen were stunned for a moment, then simultaneously breathed a sigh of relief. Since it was specially brought by the gods, and a divine beast at that, there was nothing to worry about. Their fear vanished instantly. Their gazes towards the old tortoise also softened considerably. Upon hearing the priest's words, the old tortoise's heart skipped a beat, but he immediately recognized him. "It's the god of light," he thought with absolute certainty. As for the god of light's divine possession state, he wasn't surprised. He had seen some gods and had witnessed such possession before. The only difference was whether he recognized him or not. "Luckily, I didn't say anything unpleasant to him." The old tortoise was somewhat relieved by his sharp eyesight. Otherwise, given his personality, he'd even argue with the god of rain. If he hadn't recognized him, he might have said something truly unpleasant, and that would have been terrible. After his relief, he was also secretly pleased with the god of light's words about a divine beast, feeling quite pleased with himself. Seeing that the believers had listened, Su-Yun waved to them, signaling them to disperse. After the believers reluctantly left, he nodded indifferently to the old tortoise and withdrew his consciousness from his body. When the old priest came to his senses, he stared blankly at the huge tortoise head that had approached him and was curiously looking at him, and a shiver ran through him. But before he could react, a warm feeling, as if flowing in light, suddenly came from his heart. "Perform the sacrifice." The holy voice of the god of light resounded in his heart. "Yes," he quickly and respectfully replied. Ignoring the matter between the old tortoise and the priest, Su-Yun fell into deep thought in the divine stone space. "I'll take care of things in the tribe first, and then I can go to the modern world." Thinking this, he began to organize the things in his special ring, preparing to take some things out during the sacrifice. "These divine trees are taking up too much space. It's not appropriate to put them in the divine stone space. I might as well put them in the tribe." After examining the divine trees in the ring, he glanced at the enlightenment tree in the corner, preparing to send them all away later. Just then, he suddenly remembered that there was still a small pile of faith crystals in his special ring that he hadn't checked. He immediately waved his hand. A faint yellow light flashed on the ring, and then a large pile of faith crystals appeared on the ground. As soon as the faith crystals appeared, a rich aura of faith power emanated from them, making Su-Yun, who was nearby, feel invigorated, and a hint of joy flashed in his eyes. With a wave of his hand, white light enveloped the pile of faith crystals, and then he sorted them according to their aura before he had time to examine them carefully. After counting, Su-Yun smiled and said, 3 level 5 faith crystals, 11 level 4 faith crystals, and 15 level 3 faith crystals. There weren't any below level 3, it was truly a huge profit. Especially those 3 level 5 faith crystals, which were equivalent to nearly 20 level 4 faith crystals. After checking the number of faith crystals, Su-Yun took out all the faith crystals he had and counted them. Of the faith crystals I traded with those traveling merchants at the beginning, I still have 39 level 1 and 10 level 2. The remaining level 3 faith crystals, including those in the ruins and in my special ring, amount to 80. 14 level 4 faith crystals and 3 level 5 faith crystals. Su-Yun silently estimated the quantities, his mood instantly improving. With so many faith crystals, although his consumption would be significant, it would be enough for him for a long time. Especially with the several big fish coming soon, he felt like he had money to burn. Level 1 and level 2 are no longer of any use, but they can be given to believers all at once. Su-Yun smiled slightly, finally able to act boldly. After finishing all that, he silently waited for the sacrificial ceremony to begin. Soon, the ceremony officially began under the guidance of the old priest. As the ceremony drew to a close, the old priest led his people to kneel before the divine stone. At this moment, each member of the clan felt a sense of unease. The sacrifice was demanded by the gods, and they had not received any prior explanation. Not far from the crowd, the old tortoise curiously peered over, wondering what the god of light was up to. Seeing the opportunity, Su-Yun waved his hand, and a white light enveloped all the level 1 and 2 faith crystals, sending them directly out of the divine stone space. The old priest and the other clansmen watched as the white light flashed, followed by a large pile of things. When they saw what they were, they gasped. Faith crystals. Several people in the crowd with the power of light noticed that some of the faith crystals emitted an aura several times stronger than their own, and their eyes flashed with surprise. This scene sparked a bold idea in everyone's minds. Could it be that the great god was preparing to bestow these crystals of faith upon them? Their hearts pounded, their eyes burning with fervor as they gazed at the crystals. The old tortoise, watching from the side, also showed a look of envy. Now that he had the restoration flower, what he needed most were crystals of faith. With a large quantity of crystals, he could definitely recover quickly to level 5, level 4. He almost forgot that a believer's strength could not surpass that of a god. Even with crystals, he could only recover to level 4 at most, and beyond that, he would be powerless. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break through. This was a proven fact. Just as they were lost in thought, the old priest kneeling before them seemed to have heard something, his face showing a look of flattery and surprise. Regaining his composure, the old priest shouted loudly, "Clan members, these crystals of faith are a gift from the god. I will keep them safe. Anyone who contributes to the tribe will be rewarded." Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, the Yanhuan clan members all became excited. With so many crystals of faith to be rewarded by the priests for any contribution, these words invigorated every member of the tribe. Su-Yun smiled slightly within the divine stone space. The believers' emotions pleased him. With these rewards, they would likely be even more diligent in their work. After distributing the crystals of faith, he pondered again. The believer's strength is still insufficient. Although the old turtle tribe should be safe with them, they can't rely on the old turtle for everything. They will inevitably have to go out, and the old turtle can't possibly go out with them. Thinking this, he began to consider how to solve this problem. His mind raced, and soon he thought of something. That's right. The eyeball I obtained from the evil creature in the ruins can be given to them, giving them a means of self-defense. That eyeball contained a stored divine power, at least comparable to the power of a first-level god. Moreover, it was like a power bank. Even if the divine power inside was depleted, the old priests could replenish its light power. Perhaps its power would decrease later, but it was still a decent item, equivalent to half a divine artifact. Without hesitation, he took out the eyeball and waved it away. The old priest and the others, still reeling from the joy of the crystallized faith, were then drawn to something else that emerged from the divine stone. A beautiful white bead, resembling an eye, was enveloped in white light. At the same time, a voice echoed in the old priest's mind. "This is the holy eye, barely qualifying as a half-divine artifact. I entrust it to you for safekeeping." Hearing the divine message, the old priest's beard trembled with excitement. The white light carrying the eyeball flew over, and he respectfully accepted the precious artifact with both hands. The other tribesmen stared curiously at the object. Even the old tortoise's eyes remained fixed on it. A potential artifact for a divine weapon, the old tortoise suspiciously sensed the pure, luminous divine power emanating from the object, his face filled with astonishment. He was unsure if it was truly as he suspected, but if it was indeed a potential artifact, he couldn't help but marvel at the wealth and generosity of the god of light, who could even bestow a potential artifact. Maybe I should go and beg him. Perhaps the god of light will take pity on me and bestow one upon me on a whim, the old tortoise thought excitedly. The old priest held the eyeball, and another revelation came to his mind. The god instructed him to demonstrate its effects. The old priest stood up, holding the artifact high, and explained loudly, "Fellow tribesmen, this is a divine artifact called the Holy Eye, bestowed upon us by the god." Exclamations of surprise rang out as expected. Then, everyone thought of the previous divine artifact bestowed by the god. That fire-emitting artifact was truly a wonderful thing. This bead looked very special. Could it also emit fire? In an instant, countless expectant eyes turned to the Holy Eye, eager to see its abilities. The old priest saw the expressions of his tribesmen, and a smile involuntarily appeared on his wrinkled face. Following the god's instructions, he had his tribesmen bring a huge stone. Looking at the Holy Eye in his hand, he suddenly felt a little troubled. How do I use this artifact? Feeling the countless expectant gazes upon him, sweat beaded on his forehead. In his anxiety, he tried to channel the power of light into it. A white light emanated from the white eye, and a strange feeling arose in the old priest's heart. He seemed to be able to activate the sacred eye. Hesitantly, he followed his intuition and aimed the sacred eye at the boulder. In an instant, a strong energy fluctuation emanated from the sacred eye, startling the old priest. Boom! Accompanied by a violent whooshing sound, a white laser beam as thick as a finger shot out like lightning, striking the huge rock. Bang! A hole immediately pierced through the entire boulder. The old priest's face changed color in horror, his hand trembling from side to side, causing the white laser beam to deflect. Swish! The stone was sliced in two. The old priest was dumbfounded. The excited Yanhuang people fell silent, all staring wide-eyed at the scene before them. Such powerful force. They had thought this artifact would be similar to the previous ones, capable of producing a small fire or something. This was completely different from what they had expected. Not to mention them, even the user's old priest was stunned by this power. Thank you for the 100 book coins donation. Thank you for the 100 book coins donation. Chapter 191. People from the Thunder Tribe arrive. A series of swallowing sounds rang out. This terrifying power was like divine power, so strong that it left no room for resistance. Even the fiercest and most powerful beasts in the tribe's eyes would likely be powerless against this terrifying force. The divine artifact is so powerful. Is this the divine artifact bestowed upon us by the gods? After a moment of stunned silence, the tribe's people discussed in shock, their hearts filled with joy and worship. Good stuff, the old tortoise muttered enviously. I really don't know where their good fortune came from, to encounter such a freakish guy as the god of light. Even I'm extremely envious. Before they could react, Su Yun continued to send out more items. A flash of white light appeared, followed by dozens of purple, daisy-shaped divine flowers. Another flash of white light, and 3 divine trees, each taller than the last, appeared in the open space in the blink of an eye. The tree's enormous size left everyone speechless. Then, when they noticed something special about these plants, they were all stunned. Divinely bestowed plants, so many, aside from the enlightenment tree. They weren't familiar with the others, but they knew without a doubt that they were all valuable. God was going to. Su Yun directly addressed the old priest. Plant them near the divinely bestowed plant field, protect them well, and those who make the greatest contribution to the tribe will receive their fruit. These divinely bestowed plants were useful to him, but if a tribesman made a significant contribution, such as harvesting a useful divinely bestowed plant, then it wouldn't be unreasonable to reward them. Of course, whether or not they ultimately received one was up to him. After the old priest heard his instructions and announced them, the tribesmen, unsurprisingly, became excited, staring fervently at the divine stone. A look of piety appeared on everyone's face, and various thoughts raced through their minds. Thank God, I must work hard, the thing will definitely be mine. God, Su Yun pondered for a moment, then suddenly controlled the white light enveloping the restoration flower, picking out the portion belonging to the old tortoise and presenting it to the overjoyed old tortoise. This scene filled the other tribesmen with envy, but they dared not harbor any jealousy towards God's actions, only admiration. However, their fighting spirit soared even higher. Finally, Su Yun also sent out the storage bag, announcing that the first person in the tribe to break through to the second-level divine warrior would receive it, which greatly surprised the old priest and the others. Now that things are settled, I'll wait a few more days and see if that so-called Thunder Tribe will send anyone. If not, I'll return to the modern world for now. Su Yun felt a sense of relief. According to his estimation, the Thunder Envoy had only recently left the Fire God tribe, so if they were really going to come to his tribe, it should be soon, right? Time passed quickly, and while he waited, the old tortoise ate the restoration grass to recover its strength. 3 days later, several kilometers away from the Yanhuang tribe, a group of 3 was approaching. At this moment, a middle-aged man with a broad frame but a lean build, and a dark complexion, spoke up. You, who, have you 2 notified all the major tribes? A tall, handsome young man named Zhu stretched lazily and said, I finished a long time ago. He glanced at a burly young man beside him, who resembled a black bear. I wonder if Hu has finished, he chuckled, his tone teasing. Hu glanced at him and said in a deep voice, I finished too, that's good. Hishan smiled with satisfaction. Uncle Hishan, where are we going next? You asked, somewhat puzzled. Hu scratched his head. They had clearly notified all the major tribes nearby, yet Uncle Hishan still seemed to want to go somewhere else. How could this not confuse them? Hishan sighed helplessly. I told you to keep asking the big tribes for information, but you never listened. Now you regret it, don't you? Hearing his words, Yu and Hu immediately understood. It must be something that had only recently appeared and hadn't really spread yet. Yu innocently turned his head away, while Hu blushed. Hishan shook his head, a hint of training in his mind, and said, You'll know when we get there. What? You pouted. Hishan ignored them and just kept walking. Soon, with Hishan at level 4 and Yu and Hu at level 3, the short distance was covered in just over 10 minutes, and they arrived at the outskirts of the Yanhuang tribe. As soon as they arrived, they discovered signs of habitation. Yu and Hu were somewhat dismissive, assuming it was the encampment of some large tribe. After all, they were used to it. The tribes they had visited recently were all large tribes, and they had become accustomed to it. They even felt a little disappointed, thinking it might be something serious. Hishan naturally noticed their expressions, glancing at them with amusement, secretly anticipating a good show. Sure enough, once the 3 approached and observed the tribe up close, their eyes widened in surprise. Yu subconsciously rubbed his eyes, exclaiming, Uncle Hishan, we haven't gone to the wrong place, have we? Where are we? Are you sure this is the place? From afar, it didn't seem like much, but up close, it was clearly a small tribe. Although the tribal houses looked quite nice, the sheer size of the buildings clearly indicated a small tribe, with at most 1,000 or so people. No, we haven't gone to the wrong place, this is the place, Hishan nodded. Upon hearing this, Yu and Hu were even more astonished. They were confused. Why were they looking for a tribe with perhaps less than 1,000 people? What could possibly concern such a small tribe that could disappear at any moment? Just as they were wondering, the Yanhuang tribesmen guarding outside the tribe spotted them. They had already been instructed to run into the tribe upon discovering the strangers. When the old priest and the chieftain emerged with their men, Yu and Hu subconsciously sensed the aura emanating from them and felt a surge of contempt. A tribe without even a second-level divine warrior, how weak must this tribe be? Just as they were marveling, the old priest, having sized up the 3, spoke first. Who are you? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 192 The Astonishment of the People from the Thunder Tribe. Having already categorized this small tribe in his mind, Yu habitually raised his chin, frowned, and said in a low voice, You don't need to know who we are. As a member of a level 5 major tribe, he was used to being arrogant. Even when facing other major tribes, he would at most be polite, so naturally he wouldn't take these people from a small tribe seriously. The old priest and the others frowned. If they hadn't known beforehand that these people might be envoys from the Thunder Tribe, they would have already reacted. However, before they could say anything, Black Mountain, who was next to you, frowned and looked at you with some disappointment. He then turned to Hu, noticed his expression, and a hint of relief flashed in his eyes. Then, he said seriously, You, shut up. You looked at Uncle Black Mountain in surprise, wondering why Uncle Black Mountain was reprimanding him in front of so many people. Hishan ignored him and turned to the old priest and the others apologetically, saying, I'm sorry, you is still young, I hope you won't mind too much. He then explained their origins. We are envoys from the Thunder Tribe, here specifically to discuss some matters with your tribe. The old priest and the others' expressions softened, and their gazes towards the 3 men became more gentle. You, who had been reprimanded and felt somewhat aggrieved, and who had remained silent, Both changed their expressions, becoming filled with astonishment and suspicion. Hearing Uncle Hishin's words, an unbelievable thought suddenly popped into their minds. This small tribe, could it also have been invited? How is that possible? You thought incredulously. This tribe looked to have at most 1,000 or so people. To be invited by the Thunder tribe, a tribe must be at least a large one. Their numbers were far too few. No, I must be overthinking it, he smiled wryly. Uncle Hishin hadn't actually said they were invited, and he sighed inwardly that he had indeed been overthinking things. Uncle Hishin might have something on his mind, that's why he said that. The more he thought about it, the more certain he became of this answer, and a smile appeared on his face, whose thoughts were similar to his. So it really is you, the old priest forced a smile and said, come with us. With that, he led the tribesmen towards the tribe, and Hishin and the other two quickly followed. You know us? Hishin asked with some surprise. Upon hearing this, the old priest's face showed a pious expression and said, the gods told me that the envoys from the Thunder tribe might visit in the next few days, and we have been waiting for you for a long time. Oh, a look of surprise flashed in Hishin's eyes, and then he remembered the information he had heard, and he couldn't help but show a look of understanding. Yuan who looked blank and were a little confused. Hishin smiled and said, it seems that your gods already knew, then I won't say any more nonsense. His face became serious and he said directly, our Thunder tribe wants to invite your Yanhuang tribe to participate in the competition and exchange conference held by our tribe. The old priest and the others nodded in understanding. What? Yuan who had been listening quietly the whole time, were now completely dumbfounded. The tribe had actually invited this small tribe. What right did this tribe have to do this? Uncle Hishin, what's going on? You couldn't help but ask. Hishin glanced at the two of them, then put a little distance between himself and the people in front of him, and sighed softly. Don't be fooled by the appearance of this tribe's numbers. In fact, this tribe is in no way inferior to those large tribes. As soon as he finished speaking, Yuan who were stunned with confusion. They subconsciously rubbed their eyes, but when they opened them again, the scene before them was still the same, a small tribe with few people and houses. They looked at Uncle Black Mountain in disbelief. If it weren't for the fact that Uncle Black Mountain was the real deal, they would have thought he had switched them. You're not hallucinating, this tribe is like this. Black Mountain glanced at them and then explained, this tribe may be small in number, but their god is different. As far as I know, their god of light is not at all like the power of a small tribe's god. He belongs to the level of a great tribe's god. What did you say? Yuan whose mouths dropped open, their eyes filled with disbelief. A small tribe of 1,000 people, yet their god's power is at the level of a great tribe's god. How unbelievable. Before they could recover from their shock, Black Mountain continued, I even heard some more unbelievable news from the information I gathered. That god of light's power level is not only comparable to a great tribe's god, but his combat strength is also extremely powerful. I heard that the god of blood and the god of shadow were killed by that god of light alone. Ah! Two surprised shouts rang out simultaneously. Even the old priest and others in the distance heard them and turned around to look at them strangely. It's true, the two were shocked. They had indeed discovered problems with the tribes of the blood god and the shadow god before, but thanks to the cover-ups of the opposing tribesmen, they hadn't noticed anything amiss, only feeling something was off. Now, listening to Uncle Black Mountain's words, and combining them with those details, a chilling answer was becoming clear. The blood god and the shadow god had truly fallen, and were killed by that god of light. I've investigated for a long time, and this news is basically true, Black Mountain said confidently. Yuan who were stunned, feeling somewhat dizzy. The gods of two large tribes had actually been killed by the god of light of this small tribe, and by him alone. No matter how you looked at it, this news was shocking. Black Mountain sighed, that's why I scolded you and told you to shut up earlier. I was afraid you'd say something nonsense for no reason. If we offended the god of light of this tribe, it wouldn't do us any good. Yu's face showed panic, while Hu was somewhat relieved that she hadn't said anything. Seeing Yu's expression, Hishin said, I didn't tell you about it at first because I wanted to test you both. Hu did well along the way, but you're far too arrogant. You need to understand that you can't underestimate anything. Like today's incident, if I hadn't stopped you, would you have offended the entire Yanhuang tribe? He said with a hint of exasperation. Hearing this, Yu lowered his head, a look of shame on his face. Chapter 193 Tribal Specialties and Surprises. Black Mountain continued his admonition, that god of light is not as powerful as our tribe now, but that may change in the future. He's quite special among the gods of the major tribes, his potential is considerable. It's best not to offend him if possible, and we should even try our best to win him over for our tribe." You thought about it seriously and realized that Uncle Black Mountain's words made a lot of sense, his face showing even more shame. "Therefore, the Yan Hoang tribe fully meets our invitation criteria. Don't show that arrogant attitude anymore, understand?" "Understood," you replied softly. Black Mountain nodded, then led the two, who had undergone some ideological reform and now value the Yan Hoang tribe, quickly following the old priest ahead. The old priest and the others were somewhat puzzled, but said nothing. Once they arrived at the tribe, the group began their discussions. The old priest smiled, his face full of wrinkles. "Emissaries of the Thunder tribe, the gods have already informed us of your tribe's invitation. As instructed by the gods, our Yan Hoang tribe is willing to participate in the exchange meeting held by your tribe." Black Mountain and the other two breathed a slight sigh of relief upon hearing this, their faces all breaking into smiles. With their agreement, things were much easier. If the Yan Hoang tribe hadn't agreed, they would have been in a real predicament. The atmosphere between the two sides eased considerably, and the Thunder tribe's envoys became much more agreeable. The chieftain, who had remained silent beside the old priest, said boldly, "Envoys, you must be tired after your long journey. Would you like some of our tribe's delicacies?" Hishin and the others hesitated slightly, feeling it would be impolite to refuse since the Yan Hoang tribe had just agreed. Although they weren't particularly fond of the Yan Hoang tribe's food, they still had to politely agree. "All right," Hishin nodded. The chieftain didn't say much and immediately ordered people to prepare various ingredients. The Thunder tribe's envoys were then led to the food preparation area. A short while later, the tribe's people brought various fresh ingredients, freshly processed animal meat, fish, and most importantly, some chili peppers and ginger left over from the gods. These were specially prepared for the Thunder tribe envoys to taste, as instructed by the gods, their meaning self-evident. Whether he herded one fat sheep or two, it was all the same to Su Yun, so naturally he wouldn't pass up this sales opportunity. The more fat sheep, the better. Moreover, he was confident that as long as the Thunder tribe didn't have any spices or similar plants, no, even if they did, chili peppers and ginger wouldn't go out of style. Chili peppers, needless to say, were definitely a top-tier spice, one of the most popular spices among modern people. As for ginger, although its taste was average, it was excellent for removing fishy odors and even had a warming effect. In this primitive society lacking medicine, winter was definitely a difficult time, and ginger was a valuable tool in this situation. In short, under the onslaught of chili peppers and ginger, he didn't believe the other side could resist such temptation. The old priest and the chief, along with their envoy, each found a place to sit and then discussed the names of everyone. During the conversation, Black Mountain and the others watched the women of the tribe prepare the food with a calm and curious attitude, neither expecting nor disliking it. A group of women quickly prepared the ingredients, some frying meat, others boiling fish. Soon, the marbled meat in the earthenware pot sizzled, oil seeping out and a rich aroma filling the air. Even though they were used to it, the smell did whet their appetites. However, just when they thought the meat was done, the Yan Hoang woman took some strange red stuff from an earthenware bowl and sprinkled it on the meat sizzle. As she sprinkled it, she flipped the meat, and with the heat and oil, the chili peppers released a strong, pungent aroma. Thick smoke billowed up. Cough cough cough, the pungent smell caused the people to sneeze intermittently. "What are these?" Hishin, choked by the normal physiological reaction, asked in bewilderment. "These are things our tribe uses to enhance the flavor of food," the old priest smiled proudly. Hishin and the others exchanged glances, somewhat puzzled. Before even tasting the food, the pungent smell had already dampened their impression of the fried meat, making them doubt its edibility. It was like modern people eating roasted insects, even knowing its protein, they still felt an unconscious apprehension. Before they could voice their opinions, some women approached, carrying white bowls that immediately drew their attention. "What are these?" the three asked, their eyes lingering on the white porcelain bowls. These bowls were quite different from the earthenware bowls of their tribe. Far from being unattractive, they possessed a pure and pristine quality, like exquisite treasures. "These are a specialty of our tribe," the old priest said with a smile. Before they could ask, he continued, "If your Thunder tribe needs them, our Yan Hoang tribe would be happy to sell some to you." Hearing this, the three from Black Mountain couldn't help but smile. These things looked beautiful. They were willing to bet many in their tribe would like them, and they were naturally tempted by the old priest's offer. After making some inquiries, they were pleasantly surprised to hear that they could acquire one of these items for such a low price of only 10 level 1 faith crystals. Without hesitation, and with the old priest beaming from ear to ear, each of them traded 10 to take back to their tribe to test the waters. If the response was good, they planned to trade in larger quantities later. In just one go, they had 300 level 1 faith crystals, which, even converted to level 3 faith crystals useful to Suyun, amounted to 3. Don't underestimate this small amount now. If all goes well, this is just the beginning. Once the news spreads and people experience the benefits, or as others boast and compare themselves, wealth will naturally flow in. Moreover, there are virtually no costs, only some porcelain clay, truly a highly profitable venture. With both sides satisfied and happy, the atmosphere between the two groups became even better. Just then, the fried meat was almost ready. One of the female tribe's women took out a white porcelain bowl containing some snowflake salt. Under the curious gazes of the three, she rubbed some into the salt and sprinkled it onto the fried meat. Reflected by the golden sunlight, it looked like snowflakes falling, a truly pleasing sight. "And what are these?" Who couldn't help but ask roughly. The old priest stroked his beard and smiled. "These are also a specialty of our tribe, snowflake salt, snowflake salt." Several drawn-out exclamations of surprise rang out in succession, clearly demonstrating just how astonished they were by the appearance of this salt. Chapter 194 The food of the Yanhuang tribe is really delicious. Is this really salt? You couldn't help but question. The appearance of this salt truly shattered their expectations, making them hesitate. Most importantly, even their 5th-level large tribes didn't have this kind of thing, yet an ordinary large tribe had it, and even fewer people with it. How could this not surprise them? "If you don't believe me, you can try it." The old priest didn't try to refute it, but smiled slightly, ready to let the facts speak for themselves. At this moment, several female tribespeople had already brought 3 white porcelain bowls, each filled with some fried meat slices. Looking at the white bowls presented to them, the old priest urged, "Try it." This, faced with chili peppers and snowflake salt, they hesitated for a moment, but under the old priest's words, they couldn't refuse. Hishin hesitated for a while, then took the white bowl first, and then looked at the chopsticks handed to him with some curiosity. Not understanding why, he ignored the chopsticks and directly grabbed the piece of fried meat with his hand, trying to put it in his mouth. After just a few bites, a spiciness he'd never experienced before surged through his mouth, accompanied by a touch of salt that enhanced the flavor of the grilled meat. He frowned slightly, unaccustomed to it. This sight startled Yu and who were watching him closely. A sense of foreboding washed over them. "It's awful," Yu thought with a hint of fear. The old priest and the others were also taken aback by Hishin's reaction, wondering what had gone wrong. However, before anyone could ask, Hishin, chewing for a while longer, gradually began to enjoy it. His brow relaxed, a smile spreading across his face, and he exclaimed loudly, "It tastes great." Yu, who had been about to say something in surprise, looked utterly astonished. Hu scratched his head, blinking in confusion. After finishing the grilled meat, Hishin gasped for breath, his mouth slightly open, clearly a little irritated by the spiciness. But seeing the other grilled meat slices, he couldn't resist quickly stuffing them into his mouth. For a moment, he experienced both pain and pleasure. Seeing Uncle Black Mountain wolfing down his food, Yu and Hu exchanged glances, hesitating before finally taking a bite of the fried meat slices themselves, and then they couldn't stop. "This feeling is so strange, but it's so delicious." Various praises poured from their mouths, stuffed full of fried meat slices, accompanied by gasps of surprise. Their previous indifference and aversion to food were completely dispelled by their ravenous eating. They ate with gusto. Fortunately, the women had prepared plenty, constantly adding more fried meat slices to their plates, barely enough to keep them fed. The old priest and the others breathed a sigh of relief, their faces showing satisfied smiles. Just then, the chieftain, seeing them grabbing food with their hands instead of chopsticks, their hands covered in grease, realized these Thunder Tribe envoys didn't know how to use chopsticks. So he said, "Wait a moment." Uncle Black Mountain and the others stopped what they were doing, looking at him with confusion. The chieftain quickly grabbed a pair of chopsticks and a bowl, and, holding up a slice of fried meat, explained, "These are chopsticks, created by our gods, specifically for picking up food." Cough cough cough. Hishin and the others choked awkwardly, feeling utterly ashamed. So that strange thing is for this, suddenly, watching the Yanhuang chieftain's actions with the fried meat, they felt that although he was a rough fellow, his movements were quite elegant. Looking at their own greasy hands, they felt rather crude. For a moment, the three felt endless embarrassment and blushing. The contrast was stark. They were clearly a level 5 large tribe, while the other side was not only smaller in number but also just an ordinary large tribe. This made the Yanhuang tribe seem like the level 5 large tribe, and them the ordinary ones. Whether it was the steady and mature Hishin or the young Yuanhu, their previous sense of superiority had been greatly diminished. With flushed faces, they began to learn how to use chopsticks. Although they weren't used to it at first, they could manage with a bowl and didn't embarrass themselves anymore. However, to divert attention from the awkwardness, Hishin coughed a few times and exclaimed, "The food made by your tribe is truly delicious. Both the chili peppers and the snowflake salt are excellent, even our tribe doesn't have them. I wonder if we can trade them." Hearing this, Yuanhu paused their eating, their ears perking up with concern. The old priest shook his head regretfully and explained, "I'm sorry, our tribe produces very little snowflake salt, and we don't plan to sell it for the time being." Hishin and the other two felt a pang of disappointment and quickly asked, "What about the chili peppers?" "The same goes for that." The old priest shook his head helplessly. Disappointment showed on their faces. Such good things couldn't be traded. However, just as they were feeling dejected, the old priest smiled and said, "But this is only temporary." Hishin and the others perked up, listening excitedly. "We'll see about the snowflake salt. If the chili peppers can be produced in large quantities, we'd be very willing to trade with your Thunder tribe." The three from Black Mountain showed delight. Although not entirely satisfied, the answer was enough to make them happy. Content, they continued to eat, chopsticks in hand. Just then, the fish soup was almost ready. The group, already feeling the spiciness, hurriedly drank it, ignoring the heat. Luckily, they were thick-skinned and didn't get burned. After a few sips, they were drawn to the fish soup, which had added ginger to remove the fishy smell. "This soup is delicious," praises poured in. Seeing this, the old priest quickly recounted the benefits of ginger that the gods had mentioned. In short, it could not only remove the fishy smell but also prevent and treat fever. Upon hearing this, the three from Black Mountain were stunned. The fishy smell was easy to understand, but was the fever the kind they understood? In winter, while the divine warriors were generally unaffected thanks to the power bestowed upon them by the gods, the ordinary tribespeople were a different story. They often suffered from fevers and illnesses, and in severe cases, some even died. "This ginger?" they asked repeatedly, uncertainly. After the old priest nodded in confirmation with a smile, they became excited. This ginger, Black Mountain, suppressing his excitement, was about to ask if it could be traded when the old priest understood his meaning and said regretfully, "I'm sorry, there's only a little ginger available for now. We can only trade it when it's produced in large quantities." Hearing this disappointing answer, Black Mountain sighed in frustration. You, somewhat puzzled, couldn't help but ask, "Why is that? Why is there only a little ginger and chili?" Thanks to Cool for the 200 Kidian coins reward. Thanks to for the 200 Kidian coins reward. Chapter 195 So many divinely gifted plants. It is a bit strange. Who scratched his head? Hishin looked directly at the old priest. The leader, standing beside the old priest, said somewhat embarrassedly, "I forgot to tell you, those chili peppers and ginger are divinely bestowed plants, still growing in the ground, only recently planted." Wait, Hishin was initially confused, but then his eyes widened as if he had suddenly realized something. The chili peppers and ginger, their previous effects were inherent to them, not divinely bestowed plant effects. "That's right, what's wrong?" The leader frowned, his rugged face showing some confusion. "I thought," Hishin stared in disbelief. Yuanhu were also very surprised. They had initially thought these two plants were divinely bestowed plants, never imagining that these were functions inherent to the plants themselves, which meant they have other effects. Hishin asked in surprise. Yes, the previous effects were inherent to the plants themselves. One of the women in the tribe, who was frying meat, couldn't help but say. Once they've fully matured, they'll definitely be even better. Hearing the definite answer, the three from Black Mountain swallowed hard, somewhat surprised by the chili peppers and ginger. These two things were already incredibly valuable. If they had other additional effects, how much better would they be? They were even more eager to acquire the ginger and chili peppers, determined to trade them in large quantities if they had the chance. These divinely bestowed plants, which could both enhance the taste of food and possess special properties, were impossible to ignore. The Yanhuang tribes standing in their hearts rose even higher with the addition of these two plants. Black Mountain, thinking of something and considering his desire to befriend the Yanhuang tribe, smiled and spoke. There's something I feel I need to remind you of. During the exchange meeting, besides the competitions among our tribes, each tribe will also bring their own specialties for trade. The exchange meeting is also a trade fair. I think your Yanhuang tribe should have something that catches your eye. You can prepare some things in advance to sell. I see. The chief and the others nodded in understanding, then thanked them. Afterwards, everyone focused on the delicious food before them. With chili peppers and ginger, everyone, from the three from Hishan to the old priest and the others, ate with gusto, their bellies round and full. Finally, they couldn't eat any more and regretfully gave up. After eating and drinking their fill, Hishan and the others finally had time to look around the entire Yanhuang tribe. Aside from the rather exquisite houses, the population was indeed sparse. They wondered why the god of light didn't take in more people. Logically, it should be very simple. They were filled with doubt. Suyun certainly didn't want to take in more people. The ice tribe was his first target, but time had always been too rushed. Just consider the time it took him to become a god, at most, about a month. Other gods would be ashamed if they knew. His ascension speed was unparalleled, naturally resulting in a much weaker foundation. Therefore, this time, he planned to return to the modern world to find divine artifacts. Upon his return, he would consult the Bible and other books to teach his followers about creation myths, and also experiment with crafting divine artifacts. Then, he would develop an effective brainwashing plan before dealing with the ice tribe. While observing, Black Mountain suddenly noticed several tall trees planted in the distance, near the center of the tribe. If it were just that, he wouldn't have paid much attention, but the shape of those trees clearly indicated they weren't ordinary plants. Divinely bestowed plants. This answer filled him with admiration. He thought that as expected of a large tribe, even with such a small population, they possessed everything they needed, perhaps even more. Those few trees, plus the two he was currently observing, alone revealed the wealth of the Yanhuang tribe. Wait, there seem to be some plants on the ground near the trees, and within sight, there's even a huge black creature lying there, seemingly guarding the divinely bestowed plants. Black Mountain, suppressing his surprise, turned hesitantly to the old priest, then pointed and asked, "Can we go take a look over there?" The old priest was taken aback, looked in the direction Black Mountain pointed, and immediately hesitated. That place was where many divinely bestowed plants resided. Letting this outsider go to see them, he hesitated and wavered. After a while, until a voice echoed in his mind, he relaxed his furrowed brows, smiled, and nodded in agreement. Black Mountain said happily, "Thank you." He then stood up, and Yuan who curiously followed suit. The old priest and the chief, along with some tribal men, led the way. The group quickly arrived near the field of divinely bestowed plants, gazing at the various exquisite seedlings of divinely bestowed plants planted in the village, and the newly planted purple flowers. Most importantly, 3 divine trees stood tall near the field. The entire area was transformed by these divinely bestowed plants, exuding a unique and enchanting aura. So beautiful, so many divinely bestowed plants, exclamations of wonder spontaneously escaped from Black Mountain and his companions. Their previously composed expressions became tense, their eyes burning with desire at the sight of so many plants. The old priest and others nearby secretly observed them, a hint of smugness creeping into their eyes. However, this smugness was tinged with a sense of wariness, fearing the 3 might be tempted by the sight of wealth. Black Mountain was the first to snap out of his reverie, noticing that Yuan whose eyes were still fixed on the plants, and quickly coughed a few times. Cough cough cough, Yuan who were startled, reluctantly pulling their gazes away from the plants. Despite being a level 5 tribe with countless treasures, even more than what they had before, these were all the tribe's property, and they had no right to possess them. Naturally, they felt an irresistible desire for these treasures. Black Mountain, being older and of higher status, was naturally the first to recover. If he hadn't reminded them, the other 2 would probably have remained stunned for quite a while. Seeing them regain their composure, the old priest and the others breathed a sigh of relief. Noticing the tension among the Yanhuang tribesmen, Black Mountain realized he and his companions had been somewhat out of line, and a hint of embarrassment crossed his face. "We are truly sorry for what happened just now. We were simply amazed by these divinely bestowed plants from your tribe, which led to our lapse in composure. We hope you won't mind." Then, fearing they might worry, he added, "You don't need to worry. Our Thunder tribe would never do such a thing as plundering. Our tribe's reputation would not allow us to do such a thing." His words were full of sincerity. Chapter 196 The Thunder Tribe Envoy departs. He wasn't lying. The tribe's reputation truly wouldn't allow them to do such a thing. Otherwise, if word got out, the entire Thunder tribe would lose face. No tribe would believe their envoys. Instead, they would be filled with apprehension, which would be detrimental to the tribe's development. These immediate benefits weren't worth comparing to the tribe's reputation. Of course, there was also the most important point. The Yanhuan tribe, despite their small numbers, were not to be trifled with. He had no confidence in dealing with that god of light. With the opponent's terrifying battle record, he would likely die. Hearing this, the old priest and the others could only feign indifference. Just as everyone was admiring the divinely bestowed plants, Black Mountain suddenly noticed something, his face showing surprise. He raised his finger, pointing to the two tallest divine trees and the purple flowers, and said with some uncertainty, "These divinely bestowed plants are still in their wild state." You and who were stunned. Looking closely at the divine trees and purple flowers, they found that, as Uncle Black Mountain had said, they were indeed in their wild state. This scene directly astonished them. "Aren't you afraid someone will steal them?" You couldn't hold back any longer, asking with slightly rapid breathing. Hishan and Hu were filled with astonishment and suspicion. They really couldn't understand why these divinely bestowed plants hadn't been baptized and were still in perfect condition. They knew that in this state, divinely bestowed plants could easily become someone else's property. But baptized plants were different. Even if someone took them, they would wither soon after, making it a complete loss. The old priest blinked in confusion, not understanding the reason either, and could only smile silently. The chieftain subconsciously looked at the priest, and seeing his expression, could only grin and chuckle in response. Hishan and the other two, their smiles made the three of them mutter to themselves. Could the Yanhuang tribe be so wealthy that they don't care about divinely bestowed plants at all? Thinking this, the three were filled with astonishment and suspicion. Suyun, observing from the shadows, couldn't help but twitch his lips. He didn't know what to say. He couldn't very well say he'd forgotten, could he? Luckily I was reminded. I'll add it later when I have the chance, he thought nonchalantly. Just then, a hoarse, disdainful voice suddenly rang out from nearby. "What's there to be afraid of? If you want to steal the divine plant, you'll have to get past me first." Everyone was startled and quickly turned to look. There, in the place they had been distracted by the divine plant and temporarily ignored, a massive tortoise suddenly extended its 5 limbs from its shell, looking at them with disdain. A strange beast, a look of surprise appeared on Yuan Hu's faces. "This old tortoise is our tribe's guardian beast," the old priest said helplessly. As for why it was called Old Tortoise, it was because they had been bullied by this old tortoise several times recently, and had no choice but to accept the title out of humiliation. Old Tortoise, Hishan smirked. Although he didn't agree with the title, he was still somewhat interested in and took this strange beast seriously. Even within their tribe, a tamed beast was a rare sight. These creatures, though animals, were remarkably intelligent, making them extremely difficult to subdue. Black Mountain subconsciously sensed the beast's undisguised aura. Peak level 2, the aura is a bit chaotic, seems poised to break through to level 3, he analyzed. You and Hu were somewhat surprised. This strength was already quite impressive. At least in their Thunder tribe, most beasts were only level 1 or 2. Grandpa Turtle's eyes widened, feeling slighted. Thanks to the restoration flower and faith crystals, his strength had been rapidly recovering, reaching a point close to breaking through to level 3 in just 3 days. If he hadn't lacked faith crystals, he would have already broken through to level 3. Therefore, this feeling of being slighted naturally annoyed him. He retorted angrily, "You're only level 2. Don't talk nonsense if you're ignorant." His expression turned arrogant. You're Old Turtle, I'm a powerful level 5 beast. If you anger me, I'll crush you little bugs." The old turtle's disdainful gaze swept over the 3 members of the Thunder tribe, its meaning clear. The old priest and the chieftain's lips twitched, their eyes filled with helplessness. "You, level 5, as if he'd heard a joke," you chuckled, clutching his stomach. Black Mountain and Amber's eyes were also full of amusement. In their Thunder tribe, the strongest was only a level 5 divine warrior. How could this mere level 2 beast claim to be level 5? They couldn't help but laugh. The old turtle felt humiliated, but relying on the protection of the god of light, he showed no fear. He snorted coldly, HMPH, if my strength hadn't been restored, I would have taught you a lesson your own mother wouldn't recognize. Yu's face darkened. Just as Hishin was about to laugh, he noticed something amiss with the beast's words and asked in surprise, your strength has suffered a setback and hasn't recovered yet. The old tortoise smugly replied, of course. If it weren't for my misfortune, you wouldn't be so arrogant. Seemingly afraid they wouldn't believe him, the old tortoise turned to the old priest and the leader, saying, if you don't believe me, ask them. Lai's Hanao's smile froze as he looked at the beast with suspicion, then turned to the old priest and the others. Noticing their gazes, the old priest helplessly explained for the old tortoise. Upon hearing the confirmation, Hishin, you, and who all gaped. A level 5 beast. What a joke. They didn't want to believe it, but seeing the genuine expressions on the old priest and the others' faces, they were suddenly shocked. Now you know fear, huh? HMPH, the old tortoise chuckled triumphantly. Hishin frowned, his expression becoming somewhat serious. Yu was utterly bewildered, staring with a chill down his spine at the unassuming yet eccentric beast, feeling like he'd kicked a hornet's nest. Better safe than sorry. Hishin glanced at Yu and apologized on his behalf. Sorry, Yu's young and ignorant. Please don't take offense, Grandpa Turtle. Hearing the apology and the words Grandpa Turtle, the old turtle's face lit up with a grin, humming at Yu, consider yourself lucky, kid. With that, he ignored the three and strode away arrogantly, seemingly in a good mood. Yu's face turned pale, feeling humiliated by being so ignored by a beast. Alright, Hishin patted his shoulder and shook his head. It was best not to offend a beast that was likely level 5, otherwise, even the Thunder Tribe's reputation might not be enough. More importantly, the already higher regard for the Yanhuang tribe, coupled with the discovery of this suspected level 5 beast, has significantly elevated their reputation. The Yanhuang tribe seems shrouded in mystery, becoming even more enigmatic. All of this gave him an intuition that it was best not to offend the Yanhuang tribe, lest the consequences be dire. After pondering this, Hishin snapped out of his thoughts. Seeing that the matter was settled and that lingering would be unwelcome, he immediately took his leave. Yanhuang Priest-in-Chief, the Yanhuang tribe's hospitality has been very pleasant, but we have been out for too long, and it is time to take our leave. The old Priest-in-Chief were surprised for a moment, then nodded understandingly. I'll see you off, the chief grinned. Alright, Hishin politely accepted. With the chief and others seeing them off, the Thunder Tribe envoy walked out of the tribe. Only after their figures disappeared into the forest did the chieftain, the old priest, and the others turn their gaze away and re-enter the tribe. The soft rustling of leaves underfoot echoed through the forest. As Yu walked, he kicked at the fallen leaves with displeasure, saying somewhat resentfully, I feel like we've been overshadowed this time. It's really unsettling. Chapter 197 The Little Black Ball's Mutation. Hu nodded in agreement. This trip to the Yanhuang tribe had completely shattered their sense of superiority, leaving them feeling quite uncomfortable. The Yanhuang tribe is indeed very special, Hishin sighed, then said in a deep voice, but you have to bear with it. We can't do anything, or it will damage our tribe's reputation. Besides, there's nothing we can do against the Yanhuang tribe. Their god of light isn't someone to be trifled with. As he spoke, he gave him a warning look. Don't worry, I know, you said, a hint of reluctance in his eyes. I won't do anything irrational, Uncle Hishin, don't worry, but I just thought of something. If we encounter someone from the Yanhuang tribe at the competition, we can regain our face. He smiled broadly. With the various advantages of their level 5 major tribe, facing a Yanhuang tribe god warrior of the same level, their chances of winning would undoubtedly be very high. If they won, they could regain their face and also get revenge on the Yanhuang tribe, thus relieving their frustration from today. Hishin and Hu stopped, staring at Yu in surprise. Black Mountain hesitated for a moment, then suddenly laughed. Your suggestion is quite good. The competition is meant to determine who is better. If we win, we can only blame the Yanhuang tribe for being incompetent. Yu, it seems you've been smart this time, he exclaimed with some admiration. Yu's face darkened slightly, but thinking about the scene of defeating the Yanhuang tribe later, his mood improved. Hu chuckled and scratched his head. Seeing the Thunder Tribe envoy leave, Su Yun had an idea and cast Divine Descent on the old priest, directly squeezing the old priest's consciousness deep inside and successfully taking over his body. Arriving at the divine tree that increases divine power capacity, he placed his hand on the trunk. The old tortoise not far away watched this scene in surprise, only realizing that the god of light was inside the old priest's body when Su-Yun injected divine power into the divine tree. With the injection of divine power, the divine tree trembled slightly, and white light appeared from the point of contact. Then the power within the tree tried to repel him, but it was quickly dispersed by him. 10 minutes later, the entire tree, from leaves to roots, was completely absorbed by divine power. The divine tree trembled and began to grow. Branches sprouted one by one, becoming even more lush and leafy, the green leaves shimmering with a faint light. The tree's appearance improved dramatically, becoming like a work of art. He lowered his hand from the divine tree and placed it on another withered soul tree. He used the same method, even faster. However, after completing the process, while the soul tree also underwent some changes, it didn't sprout any branches or buds. It merely appeared more vibrant, but remained withered. It seems I really need to nourish it with my soul, otherwise this tree will remain like this. Su-Yun shook his head helplessly. Next, he baptized all the remaining divinely bestowed plants. A gentle breeze blew, and the various luminous divinely bestowed plants swayed, a breathtaking sight. After admiring them for a while, Su-Yun withdrew his consciousness. Back in the divine stone space, Su-Yun murmured, "Everything's settled, I can go back now." With a slight smile, he immediately focused his consciousness on the small black sphere. However, just as he was about to activate it, an unexpected scene unfolded. Su-Yun was somewhat taken aback. After advancing to the third level god, he hadn't paid any attention to the small black sphere. Now, as he prepared to return, besides discovering that his control over it had increased, he also noticed something unusual about it. His consciousness, focused on the small black sphere, suddenly saw two bright spots, twinkling like two small stars. What are these things? Hesitating for a moment, he focused his consciousness on one of the small spots. The spot flickered slightly, then remained still for a while. Su-Yun frowned slightly, looking at the other spot, shifting his consciousness there. Whoosh! The moment his consciousness focused there, a sudden change occurred. The small black sphere twisted and then transformed into vortex. Sensing the familiar aura on the other side of the vortex, he vaguely understood something. The aura of the real world, Su-Yun murmured to himself. These two things are coordinates. He guessed what they were instantly, they were just too obvious. After a while, regaining his senses, Su-Yun's mind raced, and a sudden thought popped into his head. I can sense this kind of thing on the little black ball, so is it possible, according to his deduction, if these really were the coordinates of the little black ball, one would definitely be in the divine stone space, and the other would probably be in his physical body. If other coordinates could be added, the little black ball's usefulness would increase dramatically. For example, if you went to a place and left the coordinates, you wouldn't need to go there again, you could just use the little black ball to get there. After thinking it through, Su-Yun began experimenting. And surprisingly, after several attempts, he actually figured it out. As long as his consciousness was attached to the little black ball, and he thought about leaving coordinates, corresponding light points would be created in the space. With a thought from Su-Yun, the black vortex appeared as expected. It actually worked, and the target location where the vortex appeared was indeed the place marked earlier. Su-Yun's lips curled up slightly, and he continued the experiment in a good mood. After a while, only three can exist, he frowned slightly. After the third light point appeared, the fourth light point failed to appear using the same method as before. Perhaps it will improve in the future. Shaking his head, Su-Yun wasn't too disappointed. Wait, if I can't get more coordinates, then I've wasted one. Suddenly thinking of this, his expression turned somewhat grim. Try to erase it. Thinking of this, he quickly focused his consciousness on the newly appeared light point, and his consciousness returned the command to erase it. As soon as the thought came to mind, the light point began to slowly dim. A few seconds later, the light point disappeared. Su-Yun breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. With the ability to have an additional coordinate, traveling will be much more convenient. Moreover, the appearance of this coordinate also means I have no more worries about my physical body. Before, I was afraid that my physical body wouldn't be able to return to the real world, but now I don't have to worry about that. After dealing with the little black ball, Su-Yun activated a light vortex in the real world. The pure white divine stone space suddenly became silent. The real world, On a 2.5-meter-long bed, a young man lying on it slowly opened his eyes. Chapter 198. Returning to the modern era and searching for the divine artifact. Soo-yoon sensed the current state of his physical body. Upon returning to his physical form, an even more powerful divine force surged through him like flowing water, constantly drawing his body closer to his divine form. Perhaps due to the advancement, Soo-yoon noticed a greater change in his physical body this time. He quickly got up and expertly ran to the bathroom. Looking at his reflection in the mirror, he was astonished. A look younger, his appearance, originally in his early 20s, had become that of a 19-year-old, his face incredibly youthful, as if you could squeeze water from it. This is what they call reverse aging. If older women in the real world knew about this, they'd probably go crazy, dissecting him to study him and regain their youth, right? After this nonsensical thought, Soo-yoon shifted his attention back to observing his appearance. Besides his age, his features had also undergone some subtle adjustments, making him look even more perfect. His face, once handsome and pleasing to the eye, had reached a normal level of attractiveness. He was the kind of person who could occasionally turn heads on the street. Luckily, South Korea exists, so I don't have to worry too much about my appearance yet. Besides, I'm just an average handsome guy right now, not the kind of guy who would cause a car accident just by walking down the street, Soo-yoon thought with some relief. After observing his appearance, he began to think about what kind of artifact he should get next. The most famous ones, of course, are the artifacts related to the Holy Son of Christ. For example, the Holy Grail, the Crown of Thorns, the Spear of Longinus, the Ark of the Covenant, etc. If these could be turned into artifacts, needless to say, with the powerful faith provided by so many believers, they would definitely be incredibly powerful artifacts. Soo-yoon had also considered artifacts from other pantheons, but considering one important factor, he still focused on the artifacts of Christ. As for what that factor was, it was of course the nature of their attributes. If I'm not mistaken, the artifacts of Christ should all be of the light element. If that's the case, then if I obtain them, under the condition of matching the attributes, the light artifacts can amplify my power. Soo-yoon narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself. He recalled the defensive divine spells that Blood had previously cast using divine artifacts, and the offensive divine spells used by Fire God and the others. With the enhancement of their divine artifacts, these spells were several times more powerful, almost on par with his own blessing spells. It could be said that with the aid of their divine artifacts, even he, with his blessing spell applied, would have a hard time dealing with him. If it weren't for the comprehensive enhancement of his blessing spell, he would have truly been intimidated by their divine artifacts. Moreover, back in the ruins, when he watched Fire God and the others use their divine artifacts against their enemies, he didn't say anything on the surface, but inwardly he felt a tiny bit of envy. If I also had a matching divine artifact, my strength would definitely increase to an abnormal level. Even without using the Polar Day spell, I might not necessarily lose against a 4th-level god. The addition of several times the enhancement from a divine artifact on top of the blessing spell was terrifying to even think about. After considering all this, Soo-yoon quickly made up his mind. His first target, the sacred artifacts of Christianity. Which one should I take? Maybe all of them, Soo-yoon pondered. The Crown of Thorns and the like are easy to find, but they all have owners. If they mysteriously disappear, it'll probably cause a huge sensation, right? Although he didn't care about that, he had a slight hesitation before knowing if these artifacts were even useful. Forget it, I'll try to find the legendary lost Ark of the Covenant first, Soo-yoon smiled. Compared to the other artifacts, the Ark of the Covenant, which had mysteriously disappeared for a long time, had piqued his interest considerably. Since it was interesting and challenging, he naturally wanted to find some fun for himself. Sometimes, uncovering secrets and treasure hunting was a kind of enjoyment. Taking out his phone, Soo-yoon searched for information about the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant. The Bible records that only priests could approach the Ark of the Covenant. Ordinary people, because of their sins, were forbidden from approaching it. If they did, they would die immediately. But the Ark of the Covenant has been missing for so long, and its whereabouts remain unknown. Whether it still exists has become a great mystery that attracts the world's attention. Looking at the information, he fell into deep thought. The lost Ark of the Covenant is one of the greatest mysteries in biblical history. For Christians, the Ark contained the 10 Commandments written by God himself, concealing the ultimate link between God Yahweh and humanity. The Ark is also one of the most terrifying prehistoric artifacts in biblical history. Legend has it that this sacred chest could kill, and for the ancient Hebrews, it was both a sacred mark and a powerful talisman. Carrying it into battle was like wielding God's weapon. Even the Ark itself was shrouded in mystery. It was not only a sacred object, but also forbidden to be touched without permission. Records indicate that someone was struck dead by lightning for touching it. Outsiders even peered through the tent flaps of the Holy of Holies and observed clouds frequently gathering above the Ark. The Bible also records its immense power in many places, leveling mountains, destroying armies, and annihilating cities. However, one day 3,000 years ago, the Ark mysteriously disappeared from Solomon's temple, becoming one of the greatest mysteries in archaeological history. According to the 1st century Jewish historian Josephus, the Ark of the Covenant was destroyed along with the temple when the Roman Empire destroyed Jerusalem. However, there are also legends that someone smuggled the Ark out of Jerusalem and it is said to be stored in Ethiopia. The Discovery Channel, the channel that produced Bear Grylls' Men vs. Wild documentary, sent a film crew to Ethiopia to search for the lost Ark, but the local priests refused to allow the crew to see it. Therefore, the whereabouts of the Ark and whether it still exists remain a mystery to this day, with many different theories. Even today, people are still searching for this sacred Ark, tracing clues from ancient texts, exploring the dark caves where the Ark is said to be hidden, and visiting Ethiopian chapels where the Ark is said to be kept in folklore. Interesting, Su Yun found this information very interesting. Regardless of whether the information was true or false, it undeniably piqued his interest. "Let me see where you're hiding," Su Yun murmured to himself with a smile in his eyes. He was absolutely confident about finding the Ark of the Covenant. Without the blessing spell, he wouldn't have been so sure. But with a blessing spell granting him the blessing of destiny, he believed that if the Ark truly existed in the real world, fate would definitely guide him to it. Thanks to Little Zhao for the 100 book coins. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 199 The Lost Ark of the Covenant. Even with a blessing spell, we still need to select the most likely location where the Ark of the Covenant is hidden. Su Yun took out his phone and searched again. After a while, he pondered the information he had obtained. According to speculation, there are 3 possible locations where the Ark might be hidden. Some believe it is in a cave at the foot of Mount Sinai, a claim mentioned in the Apocrypha, the Maccabean book. The second location is in Ethiopia, a country in East Africa, where it is said to be kept in the Church of St. Mary in Aksum. Rumors say that 2 people saw the Ark in the church's basement, and that they were its guardians. Whether this is true or not, no one knows. Because those who heard the rumor were afraid of being killed by the Ark and dared not go to see it, this news has always been shrouded in uncertainty. Finally, the third location is the cave beneath the cross where the Son of Christ died at Golgotha. Among the believers was an archaeologist named Yuan Wait. He was originally a clinician in a hospital, but he was also a highly accomplished archaeologist. It was this man who discovered the remains of Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat and the wheels of Pharaoh's army chariots in the Red Sea. According to Yuan Wait, he saw the Ark of the Covenant in a cave beneath Golgotha. He once tried to enter a cave through a crack, only to find a very small opening deep inside, too large for him. He then paid a 7-year-old child to crawl inside, but the child, after looking around, immediately crawled out and ran away. Yuan Wait, having no other choice, brought another child, who, too, was terrified after just one glance. He said there was a very strange object in the cave, a yellowish cabinet with winged figures like angels on top, and bloodstains on the surface. If the child wasn't lying, and the Ark of the Covenant really was beneath Golgotha, then this would be truly miraculous. Legend has it that when the Son of God was nailed to the cross, on his deathbed, he cried out, "It is finished, Father, into your hands I commit my soul," before bowing his head to his chest and exhaling his last breath. Shortly after his death, an earthquake struck, and a crack appeared at the foot of the cross, from which the blood flowing from the cross dripped. If he wasn't mistaken, that blood should have dripped onto the Ark of the Covenant. Frankly, even Su Yun was astonished by this extreme coincidence. The Ark of the Covenant just happened to be hidden there, the Son of God just happened to die there just happened to be an earthquake, and the blood just happened to drip into it. This series of coincidences was probably comparable to winning the lottery, or even less likely. Never mind, no matter where the Ark of the Covenant is in these three places, I'm going to find it. With that thought, Soo-yoon quickly set his first target. St. Mary's Church in Aksum. What identity should I use? Soo-yoon pondered. Since it's related to the Church of Christ, I won't prepare a new identity. I'll continue playing the role of Michael. With this identity, he might even gain a group of believers while acquiring the artifact. Speaking of gaining believers, Soo-yoon quickly checked the threads of faith within his body. The number shocked him. Over 31,000 threads of faith. And not only that, these threads were increasing rapidly. Soo-yoon said with some delight, as expected of the Church of Christ, they have so many believers. Keep in mind that only a short time has passed. In the time difference of this other world, it's at most a day or two in the real world, yet he has already increased to over 31,000 threads of faith in such a short time. This is only because of the limited time, otherwise, Soo-yoon believed that with more time, he could even increase his threads of faith to the 4th level. It's just a matter of time. After marveling at the number of believers in the Church of Christ, he pondered. If I add the soul fruit, that'll be about 40,000 faith threads. That means if I can quickly get the remaining 60,000, I can advance. Excitedly thinking this through, Soo-yoon walked to the window and drew back the curtains. Golden sunlight streamed in instantly. Soo-yoon surveyed the sky. The azure sky was sparsely clouded, a rare and beautiful day. He checked the time on his phone and found it was already past 6 in the morning. The shadow artifact can't be used. What a hassle. With a slight complaint, Soo-yoon quickly began preparations. The most important issue is the route. Even with his photographic memory, searching for information almost cost him a tuft of hair, wasting about an hour. He had considered flying, but the time required immediately dissuaded him. According to the information, it would take at least 12 hours to reach his destination. It would be much faster to fly himself. Drawing the curtains, just as he was about to grab his hat and mask, a sudden inspiration struck him, and a white light appeared. A pure white baseball cap and mask suddenly appeared on his hair and mouth, and then he left the coordinates of a small black ball in the spot. After doing this, Soo-yoon quickly walked out of the residential area. He spent some time bypassing the surveillance facilities and randomly found a hidden corner of an alley. Soo-yoon reached out to condense a white jade flying sword, but then, as if remembering something, he suddenly stopped. I almost forgot, I've already advanced. I don't need to rely on the flying sword at all. I can fly into the sky with my physical body on my own. Soo-yoon smiled. In an instant, his body slowly floated up, 3 feet off the ground. Success. Flying freely in the air, Soo-yoon's lips curled slightly, and then his figure moved and soared into the sky. The wind howled, and after images flashed by. In the distance of the alley, a 5 or 6-year-old boy, looking up at the sky and licking a round lollipop, holding his mother's hand with his left hand, suddenly dropped the lollipop crack. The round lollipop shattered into several pieces, but the child didn't care, for he had found new fun. Sniffling, he excitedly pointed his right finger at the sky and shouted, "Mommy, look! Someone's flying in the sky." The woman beside him, looking down at the child with a puzzled expression, changed her expression upon hearing this, becoming very serious. Pointing at the child, she snapped, "I think someone's blowing on the ground, lying at such a young age." With that, she picked up the child and gave his bottom a hard slap. A sob quickly followed. While spanking the lying child, the woman subconsciously glanced up at the sky. The sky was still so blue, and the sunlight was still dazzlingly golden. However, there wasn't a single figure, no, a ghost, of the child. "I'll teach you to lie." The woman's anger was palpable, the slaps echoing intermittently with the child's pitiful cries. Soo-yoon, flying over 1,000 meters high, was completely unaware that because of him, an innocent child had been brutally beaten. At this moment, Soo-yoon is undergoing a transformation. 1 chapter today, 3 more tomorrow to make up for it. Sorry. Chapter 200. Soo-yoon detected by radar. With brilliant golden hair, fair skin, a high-bridged nose, and eyes as blue as the sky, he looked as handsome as the sun god Apollo. He exuded an indescribable charm, radiating a dazzling light. His attire was different from his previous appearance. Considering the Christian followers would recognize him now, he needed to conceal himself slightly until he found the artifact. He wore a white hooded suit, somewhat similar to the Ancient One's hooded suit in the Marvel movies, but mostly white with some beautiful gold patterns. The hood completely obscured his face, giving him an air of mystery. After finishing, Su-Yun cast a blessing spell on himself. Blessing spell, enhanced luck. A dazzling light flashed, and something mysterious enveloped him. With this blessing spell, my chances of reaching my destination have increased significantly, Su-Yun thought with a smile. After thinking this, his speed increased even further. A howling wind swept through the air, and following his instincts, Su-Yun moved at a speed almost invisible to the human eye, leaving trails of afterimages. The tiny objects below blurred past him with astonishing speed. A majestic eagle, wings outstretched, soared high, its sharp eyes, capable of seeing 10 kilometers ahead, fixed intently on its prey. Su-Yun, seeing the eagle's endearing appearance from afar, suddenly felt a mischievous urge. He moved with incredible speed to the eagle's side, then stopped, and before the eagle could react, swiftly stroked its smooth, soft head. And it felt surprisingly good. With a light laugh, Su-Yun's figure blurred, leaving only afterimages, before continuing his flight into the distance, leaving the eagle bewildered and uneasy. But before the eagle could ponder further, a powerful gust of wind swept past, accompanied by the eagle's panicked cries. The eagle lost its footing, its wings were bent crooked by the wind, and its entire body plummeted towards the ground. In the distance, noticing what was happening, Su-Yun's lips twitched slightly, and he could only silently pray, "I can only wish you good luck. Hopefully, you won't turn into mincemeat." Time passed. Soon, more than an hour had gone by in Su-Yun's monotonous flight. And at that very moment, thousands of kilometers away from Su-Yun, in a huge military base, an officer in an observation room glanced at the radar on his equipment. Rana, as was his habitual way of looking away, suddenly widened his eyes and quickly turned back. What is this? Such speed! He was shocked to see the dots on the radar moving at an astonishing speed. Could it be an enemy attack? Thinking of fighter jets or missile attacks, he couldn't help but shudder. No, I have to report it. In a panic, he hurriedly reached for a red button. The moment the button was pressed, a rapid, frequent alarm-like sound rang out. What's wrong? What happened? Everyone, whether eating, chatting, or even enjoying a moment of relaxation on the toilet, was startled. The person on the toilet, in particular, tensed up, their bowels twitching in shock. Damn it, a burly, bearded man cursed, grabbing some toilet paper and wiping himself hastily. What's Rana doing? He had been on duty in pairs with Rana in the observation room, but had only come out to use the restroom because he needed to, hence his confusion over the sudden change. He hurriedly opened the door and rushed to the observation room. He wasn't alone. Several people from the base also rushed to the observation room. After Rana's explanation, dozens of people were shocked. Observing the rapidly moving point of light, someone exclaimed, "Could that be a missile? It doesn't look like one, it's probably a fighter jet," a middle-aged man in uniform said, resting his chin on his hand. "Whatever it is, we'd better send someone over to check it out, Latif." Baton. "Mean, you?" He pointed to the three men, signaling them to take their fighter jets to investigate. If it was a missile, report it immediately and intercept it. If it was an enemy fighter jet, try to communicate with the personnel and warn them. If they didn't heed the warning or retaliated, they were authorized to shoot down the enemy fighter jet. Upon hearing the order, the three young officers immediately stood at attention and saluted. "Yes, sir." The three men moved swiftly, rushing towards the fighter jets. As the three fighter jets started up, a noisy, piercing roar rang out. Not long after, the sound of air being torn apart came. The three fighter jets successfully took to the sky and flew towards the target location at supersonic speed. Su-Yun was flying high in the sky, staring blankly at the dark blue sea below. Honestly, he usually stayed in the city, and this was truly the first time he'd seen the ocean in person, so he was a little curious about it. Just as he was considering whether to go into the sea to take a look, an unusual sound in the distance caught his attention. What's that? Upon closer inspection, he was surprised. Fighter jets. In an instant, he understood what was going on. Seeing how clearly they were targeting him, they were definitely looking for him. There must be some kind of base nearby, and they were probably using radar or something to track him. I was careless. I really can't underestimate modern technology, Su-Yun sighed. No wonder he'd had a strange feeling since recently. Had he been discovered? While he was admiring the excellence of modern technology, he was unaware that three fighter jets in the distance were watching him with furrowed brows. Due to the distance, they couldn't see what it was. It just didn't look like the earpieces worn by fighter jets. Just then, a questioning voice rang out. Latif, did you guys see what it was? Latif asked gruffly. Not sure, the target was too far away, we only got a general idea, but it shouldn't be a fighter jet or a missile. The shape looks a bit strange. Inside the base, dozens of people looked at each other. A strange shape, what does that mean? Logically, Latif and his men should be knowledgeable. Even if they only got a general idea, they should be able to recognize what it was. It can't be a big bird, can it? A middle-aged man joked. Maybe there really is a bird that big. A group of rough men burst into laughter, clearly amused by the big bird answer. Chapter 201. Someone is flying in the sky. Latif and his two companions, listening to the sounds coming through their earpieces, almost chuckled. Looking at the white dot in the distance, it might actually be a bird. But as they chuckled, the dot grew clearer and closer, and they gradually realized something was wrong, their laughter fading. This thing, its shape looks a bit off. The three hesitated, simultaneously slowing their pace and talking to each other. Do you think it could be a UFO? Baton joked, trying to lighten the mood. Maybe we'll be one of those people who get harassed by a UFO. Baton, are you desperate for a fame? Mean scoffed. In his opinion, encountering a legendary unidentified flying object was incredibly rare. It was probably just some small flying device. So what if I'm famous? Maybe I can even become a big star this way. Baton, the rough around the edges man, said nonchalantly. The tall officers in the base, hearing his words, immediately joined in the teasing. Big star Baton, can we get an autograph? Haha, sure, when we get back. Baton was about to answer seriously when his voice suddenly stopped, and his eyes widened like bull's eyes, almost popping out of their sockets. Latif and Mean were similarly stunned, their minds blank for a moment. The white dot in the distance became clearer and clearer, and they gradually saw what it was. It seemed to be a humanoid object dressed in white. What's going on? The group of people in the base immediately tense up. A person. That thing looks like a person, Baton stammered. What person? Some of the people in the base didn't react. Mean screamed, there's a person flying in the sky. He trembled inwardly. If the UFO topic at the beginning was just a joke, it wasn't impossible. But now, look what he saw in front of him. A person flying in the sky. Compared to UFO, the possibility of a person was ruled out from the beginning, and the idea of it simply didn't exist in their minds. However, as they drew closer, the figure appearing before them was so familiar that they had to admit it was real. What the hell are you talking about? The people in the base exclaimed in disbelief. Among the crowd, a middle-aged man with black and white hair and beard, who seemed to be the officer in charge, suddenly remembered something and urgently ordered Baton, Lieutenant Mayen, I remember your fighter jet just had a newly installed video transmission device. Turn it on immediately. As the distance closed and the figure became clearer, Mayen, still in shock, subconsciously responded, yes, sir. The next second, he turned on the video device. Inside the base, dozens of officers stared intently at a monitor screen. When the screen lit up and an image was transmitted, the base fell silent. On the crystal clear screen, besides the blue sky and white clouds, what made everyone gasp was the blurry white figure standing in the air in the distance, seemingly waiting for the fighter jet to approach. At that moment, the figure turned its head, seemingly looking directly at them, as if it had noticed their spying. Ah, my God! Exclamations of surprise rang out simultaneously, and everyone who witnessed this scene felt their hearts pound. What did it mean to see a figure in the sky? If that figure had some kind of equipment, they could accept it. But the transmitted images clearly showed that the figure had no such equipment at all, just like any other person on the street. The more this was the case, the more astonished they became. Everyone present knew what this meant. A person flying in the sky out of thin air could only be someone with scientific powers, or a god from mythology. Otherwise, how could a person fly in the air without any support? Suyun stood on the air, watching the three gray fighter jets that were now very close, especially one of them, which gave off a familiar feeling of being spied on, causing him to chuckle softly. Interesting. After only a moment's hesitation, Suyun decided to play around with the other party. After all, such an opportunity was rare. A fighting chicken, to be honest, was a first for him. At this moment, several fighter jets began circling him at a distance. Baton, suppressing his shock and trembling, raised his right arm and waved, wanting to greet the mysterious hooded man in white. He didn't know if the other party was human or not. Although the appearance was indeed humanoid, it was also possible that the other party was an anomaly. Even so, they still hoped to communicate with the other party. Regardless of how the other party flew in the sky, whether it used high technology or mysterious power, it seemed that they were not someone they could provoke. This was the consensus that arose in their minds the moment they saw the figure flying in the sky. Soo-yoon was also somewhat surprised to see the three pilots waving. He thought these three people would attack, and if that were the case, he would have no choice but to destroy the other party. He didn't expect them to greet him so amicably. Latif, fly closer and see if the other party is human, the middle-aged officer ordered, suppressing his excitement. A person flying in the sky. This is even more astonishing than a UFO. Yes, Latif and the other two obeyed. They hesitated for a few seconds, then flew towards the white-clad, hooded figure. Soo-yoon watched their actions, raising an eyebrow and a smile appearing in his eyes. He moved. The three who were cautiously approaching, along with dozens of people in the base, were stunned. Because the floating white-clad figure had vanished. Just now, I think I saw a white shadow drift by, Baton said uncertainly. With their naked eyes, they had only seen a white shadow flash by for a moment, as if their eyes were playing tricks on them, and the figure disappeared from the spot. Latif, who had the best dynamic vision among the three, hesitated. I think I saw that figure flash towards Baton, but I'm not sure. Hey brother, are you kidding me? Baton was startled, his eyes showing some panic. Look, he's right on Baton's fuselage. Latif's mouth dropped open. It really is there, Ma-en exclaimed in shock. Everyone in the base was also startled. When Ma-en turned his gaze, the figure naturally came into view. The figure in white was now standing behind the glass dome above the Baton fighter jet, seemingly admiring the scenery. Chapter 202 The shocked people at the base. And as they suspected, Soo-yoon had indeed decided to play around and was currently standing atop the fighter jet, admiring the scenery. He casually took a few steps, his feet resting on the gray fuselage. My God, everyone stared in disbelief. Fighter jets are incredibly fast. Even if they slowed down, a person standing there would be blown away immediately. But the white-clad figure didn't budge an inch, even walking steadily a few steps on it. It was unbelievable. Baton's face paled, and cold sweat began to beat on his forehead and back. Then, a shadow fell from the glass dome, enveloping him, and his expression froze. This sight immediately made Baton realize something. He slowly turned his head, his eyes filled with terror as he looked upwards. The white-clad figure was actually standing on his glass dome, yet even so, the figure didn't sway in the slightest, as if it felt no wind. The moment Baton saw the figure, he instinctively peered at the head beneath the hood, wanting to see what this mysterious humanoid figure looked like. Soo-yoon naturally noticed his actions, merely raising an eyebrow slightly, paying no attention. Baton trembled, his mind racing. A large gray head, two big black eyes, the image of an alien from a movie naturally came to mind. However, when he truly saw the figure's face, he froze. The face beneath the hood wasn't the alien face he initially imagined. Instead, it was a pure human face. No, it shouldn't be a human face. It was the face of a god. The face was fair and translucent, with incredibly handsome and masculine features. A strand of brilliant golden hair peeked out from under the hood, like the golden sunlight pouring down from the horizon, so dazzling. And those eyes, as blue as the sky, looked clean and clear, as if they could reflect the filth in anyone's heart. His overall appearance was as if he had received the utmost favor from heaven, something no human could possibly possess. Especially the aura surrounding this white-clad figure made him appear even more otherworldly, like a legendary god. Only a god could possess such an appearance, right? Baton murmured to himself. Coupled with the fact that the other could fly, this answer resonated deeply within him, leaving him bewildered. Heavens, if the other is truly a god, then am I being watched by a god? The thought sent shivers down his spine, a suffocating feeling of being enveloped in happiness. Soo-yoon chuckled lightly. This guy was truly interesting, seemingly simple-minded. The god smiled, and Baton's mouth gaped open, utterly dumbfounded. Just then, the fighter jet encountered some problems, seemingly due to his prolonged distraction, causing instability. Ah, Baton exclaimed in surprise, quickly turning his HUD back. The entire fighter jet seemed to have lost its balance, beginning to hurtle downwards at high speed. Not good, he cried out in alarm, immediately attempting to stabilize the aircraft. Due to the short notice, a recovery wouldn't be possible in a short time. Baton, a series of worried exclamations rang out. Soo-yoon, who was about to leave, was speechless at this turn of events. He was still standing there. Fine, I'll help you out since you seem alright. Although he thought the other would recover soon, he was just in case. Soo-yoon spread his hands, and a beam of white light shot out, quickly enveloping the fighter jet. He carefully controlled his strength, and the white light guided the entire aircraft to quickly regain its balance. Baton, who was struggling, was dumbfounded. Latif and Min, who had followed from a distance, along with the others from the base, all watched with bewilderment and shock. What was this white light? If Soo-yoon's initial flight was somewhat normal, the white light he emitted now completely shattered their worldview. This is a mysterious power, the middle-aged officer said, his face changing, his beard trembling. I must not have woken up properly today, a young officer exclaimed. At this moment, everyone was filled with shock. Seeing that he had stabilized the fighter jet, Soo-yoon muttered to himself, "Fine, I've had enough fun, time to slip away." If he didn't leave now, it would be harder later. Leaving while these people were still stunned was the best option. But that radar is a bit troublesome. Soo-yoon frowned slightly. His mind raced, and he quickly came up with a solution. Radar seems to operate on electromagnetic waves, and light is also a type of electromagnetic wave. If I extinguish the light on my body, wouldn't it mean the radar might malfunction? Even if it doesn't malfunction, it should still have some effect, right? Soo-yoon thought hesitantly. Never mind. Even if this method doesn't work, he has a backup plan. The shadow artifact. By merging into the shadows using the shadow artifact, he should be able to evade radar detection. Having thought this through, Soo-yoon glanced at the two other fighter jets approaching and immediately began to act. He activated the light within his body. In an instant, endless light emanated from his body, quickly illuminating an area of nearly 1,000 meters, turning the world into a white blur. Whether it was the people on the fighter jet or those observing from within the base, all they could see was a vast expanse of white. Nothing around them could be seen. Just as they were in shock, all the visible and invisible light surrounding Soo-yoon was extinguished by his eternal night technique. Simultaneously, his figure blurred past, and he plummeted rapidly into the sea. 3 or 4 seconds after he disappeared, the white light in the air slowly dimmed, and everyone's vision returned to normal. Where is he? Everyone's expression changed as they discovered that the white-clad, hooded figure on the Baton fighter jet had vanished completely, without a trace. Inside the base. Quick, check the radar. The middle-aged officer's face changed, and he immediately shouted. Dozens of people quickly turned their attention to the radar, but when they looked, they were all dumbfounded. The dot of light that was originally on the radar screen had inexplicably disappeared. The middle-aged officer muttered in shock, "How could this happen?" Disappeared from the radar. This radar had a range of thousands of kilometers. For it to disappear from that range, there were only two possibilities. One was that the enemy could block the radar, the other was even more terrifying. The enemy had instantly jumped thousands of kilometers away. Not only did he think of this, but the others also guessed this possibility, and they all swallowed hard. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.